Also letting you know that today's session is being recorded. So if you are asking questions, let's try to keep them in a confidential state. So try not to mention any customer names and or people's names during that, but because it will be it is being recorded. It's also being recorded. You'll get a link to the recording so that you can come back to it at another time, and you can review some of the content again. And if you get called away, as we often do for a couple minutes, and you want to go back and see what you missed, that's going to be available to you. We're on the line until 4 o'clock today. We're going to take a break at 2:30 for about 10 minutes. And as usual, when we do these sessions, I'm going to encourage you to leave the room. Just, turn off your microphone and go do your business, and then come on back. Sometimes when you leave the room and try to come back again, there's some technical challenges around that. So for the 10 minutes, I encourage you to kind of stay online. Hopefully you can see my screen, and I'm not seeing my screen at this particular moment. So let's just give this a second here. That's not what I want to do. Here we go. Okay, so for today's meeting, we're doing the first of our industry professional sales training. As everyone knows, recruitment has been an integral part of the CPC for many years. And this year, we've added the sales training component to it. So your feedback concerning today's session would be fantastic in any way possible. Well, let's just get started. If I can make the screen move. So everyone knows that attaining your CPC requires a minimum of 5 modules. 5 modules include 2 legals modules of business practices and ethics, which was presented yesterday, health and safety, and recruitment and selection. And now as an option, we have professional sales. So you can take either or both of these modules towards your CPC. And certified personnel consultant designation is the only professional designation that is offered in Canada, and it's offered only by ACSESS. And so one of the benefits of being a member company. When you've completed 5 or 6 of your CPC modules, you are eligible to take the challenge exam. It's done at your timing. It's not done at a predetermined time. So when you're ready to write your exam and you've qualified for it, then you can do your studying, and you will be sent a link in order to do that. It is a multiple guess exam, so multiple choice. You're not required to memorize any particular very specific things. Most of it is around the concepts of the things that we teach. And also, legal is a great example. Of course, there's all the provinces in Canada often have slightly different rules, regulations, legislation, and statutes. And so we don't expect people to memorize all of the statutes. What's important and information, what's important is that you understand that it is the topic. There are places that you can look this stuff up. Things change. So it's important that we kind of just understand what the issues are and have a real general understanding of them, and knowing that from time to time things do change. When we're talking about sales in the recruitment and staffing services industry, sometimes in some companies, we've got titles like sales associates, pretty clear what your role and responsibilities are. But we also have other titles that we see all the time, and these are just some examples, like account manager and business development rep, or a search consultant, or an executive recruiter. A staffing consultant, obviously the sales reps, staffing coordinators, sales associates, recruitment coordinators, the talent acquisition specialists. I've seen every title under the sun, and I'm not sure if every time we see a title, it exactly represents what the roles and responsibilities of that title are. But the reality is that every single role in a staffing company has some important components to sales to it. So when we think about sales, we think about all the different types of activities Very often our first thought is, oh, we're going to be doing cold calling, or we're out on presentations sitting across the desk from our customers. Well, very often that's not the case. The case might be that we're a service coordinator and we fill jobs and we do lots of recruitment, but there are many steps in the process of what we do that require sales skills, skill, and an understanding of sales. In the industry, we also talk about the 360 desk, or a full desk, or a full cycle desk. And these can include things like marketing activities, participating in events, generating leads, developing new clients. Sometimes developing a client isn't the same as generating an order. Sometimes you need to get on a list in order to generate orders, and then you have to do other activities in order to generate orders. The recruitment process itself has got different stages of sales in it. When we're trying to close a candidate on a job, or get them to accept a job, or maybe even just to come for an interview, might be part of, or show interest in a job could be part of a sales process. We've obviously, the parts of matching are all about the consultative parts of the jobs, send outs, getting customers to receive our candidates, to interview our candidates, and of course, closing candidates. And we all have a particular role in client relationships and maintaining, developing, and nurturing the relationships with our customers. And again, all of this is intended to help build a rapport with our customers, a relationship, and a process for us to do more sales. So the big question is, what about these salespeople? Are they born? They say, oh, she's a natural born salesperson. Or are they made? Is it because your organization has got tremendous, rigorous sales training? Is it through nature because we have it within us genetically? Or is it nurtured because we had great leaders and managers and people that nurtured us along the way and mentored us to becoming great salespeople? Is it your personality? Are some people, do they have the right personalities to be successful salespeople? Or is it a process that if you follow these steps all along the way, you're likely to have great sales performance? But the reality is that sales, usually the top performers usually possess a unique set of these personality traits, these born traits, these genetic traits, these natural traits in their personality. And they also follow a defined repetitive process. And one without the other typically doesn't result in top performance. So it's a combination of the two. So what are some of these traits or these behaviors of great salespeople? Oh, we talk about salespeople having a positive attitude, or that they're tenacious and persistent, or that they're friendly and they're able to develop rapport and relationships with people quickly. I think a lot of salespeople are inquisitive listeners. I call it guerrilla listening. This is when the person who's speaking knows that you're listening because you're actively engaged in that listening by nodding your head and acknowledging that you've heard what they said and repeating things back again, using facial expressions and intonations to let them know that you hear and you understand. Great salespeople are often outgoing communicators, not afraid to talk, not afraid to express their opinion, not afraid to engage in communication with other people. Great salespeople are often supportive and helpful. They're nurturing and consultative, and they want things to be right. Some of the best salespeople in the recruitment and staffing industry are the problem solvers, the ones who can overcome the issues of travel and location and money and terms of employment agreements and relationships and job descriptions and all the things that they play as a middleman in putting the pieces of the puzzle together. They become great problem solvers. I've even seen executive search consultants find both husband and wife jobs so that they could move from, the Yukon to Calgary. But they wouldn't have moved unless both husband and wife could find suitable careers to take them along their way. Great salespeople are confident. What I call it assertiveness, that they have the confidence to ask questions and to wonder what, and to ask why not. And also, great salespeople are believable and they're honest. And any salesperson who's not honest and believable will likely find that their sales career is short-lived. So some people on the phone may have seen a profile like this before. I personally have done over 10,000 personality profiles, with the vast majority of them being with people in the recruitment and staffing industry. And we see personality traits in some of the top performers that are pretty darn consistent. We see this, I mentioned it, assertiveness, or this aggressiveness, where a person is results focused and self-confident. They're bold and they seek out challenges and they want to overcome those challenges. They're willing to take risks. They're willing to hear no and then ask why not. We talk about them being visionaries, wanting to make a difference in the lives of the people that they serve and the organizations that they help. We measure a trait in people's personalities called sociability. This is the woofulness, the outgoingness of people, for their ability to be persuasive and enthusiastic. They can draw ideas out of people and draw people into their circle. That they are participative and other people want to participate with them because they're expressive and they're talkative. And we know that relationships are built when people feel that they've got a connection in common. And so we find that great salespeople are sociable. On the other end of the coin, we might find that great researchers in a laboratory are not so sociable. They got their head down and they're looking at the facts and they're measuring things and they're not distracted by communication and people and relationships and so on, because they need to make sure that the science that they're following or the accounting that they're doing is perfectly right and complete and to the end. And so we see differences in personality, none better than the other, no person better than the other. But when it comes to sales, we find more sociable, outgoing people tend to do better. In sales, we have a tendency to be impatient. As a matter of fact, impatience is good. Multitasking, being proactive, being busy, mobile, starting things, new things before the last one is completed, overlapping activities and getting on to something else before the last one is even done. Because as impatient salespeople, we want to move things forward to closure. And as we see opportunities, we grab them and we take advantage of them. Whereas, again, if I were to compare that to, say, for example, the accounting person or the lab scientist, they prefer routine, systematic, methodical, focused procedures and process to make sure that everything is done right, likely completing one task in a linear path before they begin the next one, so they can make sure that this one is done absolutely perfectly, done right and complete, in order to proceed on to the next step or the next activity. Again, neither the steadfastness or the fast-pacedness are better characteristics in a person. They don't make them better people. But very often the impatient sales in a personality makes a person a better salesperson. And of course, there's this issue of detail orientation. Do we get it right? Do we take the order right? Do we have the details about the customer right? Do we show up on time? Do we document our information in a protective way? If we're overly detailed as salespeople, we tend to have this paralysis by analysis. We keep on wanting to detail it more, write down more, do more research, and we end up procrastinating and showing call reluctance and not necessarily taking the actions or participating in the activities that move us towards closure. And yet, if we're too far to the left on this scale, where we're too flexible and unruly and we're not documenting our information, then possibly just going to return a sales call could mean struggling around looking through your desk. How do I find that number? So using our CRM and documenting things in a particular way help us to be more productive. So we like to see in the middle a nice balance of people who are structured to the right, flexible to the left, able to move back and forth across the spectrum of detail and flexible openness. We also find this trait in great salespeople called behavioral adaptability. This is the chameleon-like skills of a person, that they can meet new people and very quickly sense what kind of person they are. Are they social? Are they assertive? Are they patient? Are they impatient? Are they detailed? Are they fast? Are they slow? Do they talk quickly? Do they have a great sense of humor? Are they informal or formal? And we can, a great salesperson can modify their behavior or adapt their behavior easily to match the behaviors and personalities of the people they're talking to. This doesn't mean being dishonest or evasive or presenting yourself different from where you are, but it's being respectful of and understanding how other people like to communicate and how other people like to make decisions. And great salespeople have this trait within them. Unlike, say, for example, a person with low behavioral adaptability, left on the scale, would be like the leopard spots that don't change. So that person would be the exact same every single time. And it is a trait actually in your personality to either be like the leopard with their spots unchanging or be more like the chameleon who is able to move and change. And again, one is not better than the other. In some professions, we want people to be exactly the same all the time. And of course, in other professions, we don't want them to be able to adapt one way or the other. And in sales, we find that there's a higher tendency towards behavioral adaptability. Again, also, we look for a balance of emotional control. If we've got super emotive people, we have to understand the fact that in sales, probably 90% of the sales attempts might fail. And a highly emotional person might take that personally, and it might affect um, their their focus. It might affect their attitude towards making more sales calls and moving towards closure with other people. So overly emotional people often have got this roller coaster ride of sales because of the success and failure. And yet overly controlled people who are more based only in logic often are not able to incite and encourage the excitement and emotion of buyers and other participants in the buying process. So we look for a little bit more controlled, logical behavior so that they can make decisions about what's best next, but also have this ability to evoke emotion when it's appropriate and when it's necessary. And of course, I already spoke earlier about creativity, about solving problems and helping customers find the right solutions and overcoming objections and being to find creative ways to solve problems. We often use the term sales and marketing and something, oh, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm in sales and marketing at ABC Staffing Company. Well, these terms are often combined, which is not to mean that sales representatives are responsible for marketing, like designing logos and developing brands and creating advertisements and developing printed collateral. But it's also not to mean that the marketing representatives who do those functions are responsible for going on sales calls and negotiating deals. So the title or description of sales and marketing is often meant to describe really a salesperson who regularly utilizes the company's marketing tools to help them in their sales process to be more efficient and more consistent and more predictable. But mostly it's so that they are really in tune with their sales process, reflecting the messaging that is intended through the marketing programs. And so we use the term sales and marketing is really, quite frankly, a little bit of a misleading moniker. They both, sales and marketing, both impact lead generation. And then, of course, lead generation translates into revenue. So sales refers to all those activities that directly lead to a customer's purchasing. And the marketing activity is the process of getting people, finding people, discovering people, uncovering people, encouraging and attracting people who will have an interest so that they can buy or they can be sold. So marketing creates brand awareness and interest, and marketing is intended to attract potential customers and to improve your lead generation, while sales is the active process. It's an activity of proactively creating these leads, either by just making cold calls, for example, and then convincing those people to buy your products or services. So what are some examples of marketing? Clearly advertising, branding, logo development, that sort of thing. Direct mail campaigns are an important part of marketing. And very often we put it on our salespeople to be sending out their direct mail and their mail campaigns and so on. And it's really a marketing activity that we don't want to get confused with a sales activity. Email broadcasts, blogging, educational content, pay-per-click internet advertising. I know of some companies that have zero success with it, and other companies, I think someone on this call I know has had some tremendous success with pay-per-click advertising. Event promotion, sponsorship, these are all examples of branding. Even things like writing white papers and developing educational resources, or speaking at conferences or at corporate events. Your association membership is a form of marketing for you, telling the world that you're a member of ACSESS, having your certification, your CPC. If you're in a province that requires licensing, having a license is not only a regulatory requirement, but it's also a part of your branding and your marketing. Obviously things like logos and slogans, coupons and promotions. So all sellers are marketers too. As professional sellers in the staffing industry, we do a better job of enhancing our reputation, of building and developing our credibility, of creating opportunities, and even by closing at a higher percentage by actively participating in the marketing activities. When you're in the staffing industry, it's the roles are not so defined. You say, "Oh, that's the marketing guys. They do that." When we, as salespeople, understand exactly what the marketing folks are doing, or what the marketing program is intended to do, who it's directed toward, what it's intended to achieve, what message they're trying to convey, and we adopt that as a salesperson and we use it, then we work together with our marketing in order to leverage that marketing collateral. And so we can be aware and consistent with our marketing brand and increase our chances of selling. So these sales activities, some of them are pretty traditional, and that's what we think of, and sometimes not so much. So for example, telesales, making telemarketing calls, well, it's sales. Cold calling, knocking on doors, developing new prospects, following up on leads, getting a lead or a referral from someone. I don't think there's a lot of door knocking that goes on these days, but I think that in the light industrial world and sometimes in the technical world, walking on site and talking to the customer, knocking on their door, going around to the distribution center or the loading docks and talking to the supervisors, sometimes that's a great way of making a sales call. Of course, referral generation and asking someone to give you a referral is part of a sales call, but only if you follow up on it. Other than that, it's just collecting information. We also think of a lot of places say the inbound sales desk or the order desk. People often think of that as a customer service role, but we know that when people have those profiles that I showed you earlier that are more likely to be successful in sales, that when we put those profiles on a sales desk, people upsell, cross-sell, overcome objections. They hear objections about price and about issues or about compatibility of products or services in the customer's voice, and they're able to deal with it. They cross-sell to people. So an inbound order taker, someone in your staffing company who you if you think his only responsibility is to answer the phone and take the order and begin the order fulfillment process, those are probably the people that have got the greatest opportunity, closest with the rubber to the road in order to make a difference in selling. CRM data management. So we've obviously got technical people who help us decide what those CRM tools are all about, but using the tool effectively and correctly is an important part of sales. Because remember, we're not looking for overly fastidious, crazy documentation, detail-oriented people. We're looking for people that detail enough. And having the technology, having the CRM tools available that make that job easier for a salesperson means that they can do enough, and yet it gets organized and becomes retrievable in a very efficient way. When we think of sales, we often think of that sales presentation, the sales call out in front of the customer doing the presentation. We talk about client penetration, existing clients who have got new buyers in the organization or other departments in the organization, or you're selling them executive search and you want to introduce your temporary staffing or contract staffing to them, or vice versa. Proposal writing. It seems as though that branch managers, owners are always thinking about the proposal, and the salesperson is always looking at the proposal as a barrier in order for them to get it done. But in fact, there's a significant percentage of customers in this world that will only do business under an RFP or an RFI or a proposal or a written proposal or quote. And so our salespeople have to be actively engaged in and understanding what needs to be in those proposals, not necessarily the person sitting there typing it, but needs to be actively engaged, involved with what's in those proposals so that they can help to address the dominant decision criteria that are going to be relied upon in order to decide who the new vendors or the vendors are going to be. So when we talk about the sales process of qualifying leads, about evaluating prospects, the learning and understanding of buyers' process in which they buy, discovering and overcoming objections, negotiating prices and terms of an agreement, contracts and agreement authorizations, getting people to sign. Just getting a signature on a piece of paper after they've said yes sometimes requires some sales in order to get that done, to book the appointment, to get in front of them, to overcome that last objection, to get that final commitment. First, closing on a deal, closing on a customer, closing on a candidate, closing on an interview, closing on a job offer, closing on a start. These are all forms of closing, getting the customer to say, yes, go now. Of course, problem solving and relationship management are all part of sales. That service follow-up is always part of a salesperson's process. Very often when salespeople are going into this process, we hear terms inside businesses about the sales funnel or the sales pipeline. And a lot of people use the terms funnel and pipeline interchangeably, when quite frankly, there's a subtle difference in the context of the meaning of a funnel or a pipeline. So a funnel is this process where we've got a starting point with many leads that come into the big part, the top of the funnel. And I'll show you a diagram to kind of reflect that in a moment. And then as the leads get whittled down, get qualified and sold to and so on, we get we have many that go into the top of the funnel and fewer sales that come out from the bottom of the funnel. Whereas a pipeline is different. A pipeline is when we take a lead that is probably a qualified lead and we're moving them through the process of decision. So first we have to meet with them. Then we have to get, all the information about their jobs and their job orders and their pricing and their guarantees and their locations and their roles and job descriptions and so on. And then we have to, meet the managers, and then we have to get the contract negotiation terms of the contract. We have to get it signed. We have to start to get orders. We have to do our workplace health and safety. So the pipeline is when we're taking, if you think about an oil pipeline or going into a refinery and out the back end, it's going through a process. It's not necessarily being whittled down like the funnel from many to one or many to few. It is a process that somebody has to go through while they're in the sales process or pipeline. So the funnel typically looks like this. This is a pretty typical, type of sales funnel graph, where the lead comes in from PPC or from a referral or from a sales call or something. And then we need to qualify that prospect. We're going to talk in a few minutes about what it means to qualify. And then we go through these sales activities. And of course, at the end of the day, hopefully a certain percentage of them turn into sales. Now, a lot of times people don't think of marketing leads as great leads. So first off, let's think about the marketing leads come from advertising and websites and unsolicited referrals. They just come from names and signage and advertising on the boards of the hockey game. They can come from search engine optimization. Marketing generates leads from active buyers. So you know this, you've watched the commercial, you've seen it before. There's a celebrity or there's a joke or there's a play on words, and you remember the celebrity or the joke or the play on words, but you don't even remember or know what the name of the company it is that they're representing, or can't even remember or only slightly vaguely remember what the product or service it is that they're offering. So for example, I can think of Tom Selleck is involved in the United States in television advertising for reverse mortgages. I have no idea what the name of that company is in the United States. In Canada, Peter Mansbridge is now selling reverse mortgages. I have no idea what the name of that company is because I'm not an active buyer. I don't want to sell my mortgage to a company to borrow money from them. So I recognize the joke or the comment or the actor, but I don't remember what the product or service is or who the company is because I'm not an active buyer. But when you generate a lead through marketing where the person contacts you, you know that they're an active buyer. They've got an interest in buying something from you. Whereas on a sales call, a cold call, when you call someone, you have no idea whether or not they're an active buyer or not. Part of the process is to find out whether they're an active buyer or not, or whether they have any interest. So we have these cold calls. We try to make informed calls because if somebody tells us something about somebody, at least we start to think they're probably an active buyer. And so we call them. We can get solicited referrals. Again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the leads to be a little bit more defined so that the lead's just not a name, not just an email address, but something about them. So when we develop these sales campaigns and we go to past clients and we go to lists of people who've bought before, people that buy, our whole intent in developing leads through a salesperson is to try to be focused on the leads that are more qualified. So probably the ones that have been marketed to and have shown some interest or have come through some process that have shown some interest. So we use different terminology for this. We talk about active leads or warm leads, and we talk about passive leads and cold leads. So active leads are prospects or buyers who are actively seeking and researching a source. A warm lead's when you know something about them, or they tell you something about them that's meaningful about the buyer and their needs. Whereas these passive leads, these are the ones that frustrate salespeople like crazy. The ones where some people that don't have the persistence to continue to go and the courage to hear no. The ones are dealing with passive leads. These are prospects or buyers who purchase your services, but they might purchase your services, possibly could purchase your services, but they're not actively seeking or researching, and they're not showing any interest at that time. A cold lead is when a buyer is not familiar with you, when they have little knowledge of you, of their not expressing their needs, and they haven't expressed any buying criteria. So again, we challenge our salespeople. Because without a marketing program or some way to qualify leads in advance, we're asking our salespeople to deal with cold leads all the time, which again is probably the most frustrating thing for salespeople and the reason why some people don't succeed or don't continue in sales. So some ways, again, I'm going to go back to the CRM and the documentation. At least having documented things about past conversations will help you start to build a persona about a customer so that they feel warm, so that they are more warm, so that they are more active leads. So the active lead allows the seller to more quickly engage in their interest and develop rapport. It allows you to be more inclined to discuss the real important information. so that they can consider the possibility of doing business with you. Where with the cold lead, it requires a seller to be investigative, to find a path, to engage in that conversation, to try to generate interest, and then earn the relationship after the fact. Cold leads are more inclined to avoid you, to create barriers for you, to withhold information from you, to sometimes not even be honest with you, and less inclined to consider possibilities. There's nothing wrong with cold leads. Cold leads turn to warm leads when we effectively handle cold leads and we deal with them in a professional way and with persistence and with repetitiveness. But the whole goal is to take it from cold to warm so that our salespeople, for you, have a fighting chance to turn it into a deal. So when we go to talk to people, our customers, our prospects, they tend to ask us, so what makes you different from everybody else? What makes you different from your others? Well, first off, got to give you credit. You're here. You're on this call. You're a member of ACSESS. Your company is a member of ACSESS. You've demonstrated your commitment to your profession by acquiring your CPC designation, which puts you head and shoulders amongst other people that might leave the impression that they're not going to be around for a long time, that they haven't made. It's not necessarily true. There's all kinds of people who've been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years that don't have their CPC. But when you do have your CPC from a marketing perspective, you send the message to your buyers that you are committed to your profession. But at the end of the day, when people ask about the difference in you and your company and your services, I mean, there are differences, and some companies have some of this and some of that. Some of them are better at this and some are better at that. Some are no good at this and some are others are no good at that. What differentiates you all the time is you. You don't work for the competition. The relationship that you are building with the customer is your relationship with the customer. The rapport that you build with the customer is yours. Your honesty, your integrity, your effort, your knowledge, your intentions, your willingness to work hard. These are all yours. These are the things that at the end of the day, we all work for companies that tell us internally how much better we are than everybody else. I got to let you know, I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 different staffing companies, and we are all different. But every company is not better than every other company. And yet every company internally is telling their people and believing and wanting to be different and better than everybody else, when sometimes we're only a little bit better at some things, which could be our differentiator that really gets us hooked to that client. But at the end of the day, nobody else is you. So these competitive differentiators above and beyond you kind of fall into two categories. They are the differentiators that exist in the company and the differentiators that exist in you, the person, or the people you work with. For the company, we look at features and benefits. So it's your technology, it's your location, it's how big you are, the size of your database, the areas of specialization that you have. So these are all features and benefits of the company. Companies look for organizations that can solve a problem. If they don't have a need, want, or desire, some kind of thing that can be defined as a problem per se, then there's nothing to overcome. There's nothing to solve. And so they look for companies that have got features and benefits that will help them solve their problem. Some organizations, especially larger organizations, customers, have got criteria. They've got the insurance policy that you must have. They've got the licensing that you must have. They've got the financial credibility that you must have. They've got the years in business that you must have. They've got the integration of your technology that you must have. And so there's every customer has different decision criteria. The question is, does your company meet their criteria? And they're going to choose companies that meet the most of their criteria. They look for credibility and the reputation of a staffing company. So the years in service, the things you've done, the people who manage and own the company, the other customers that you serve, your financial statements, your financial credibility, your licensing, your professionalism. They look for reliability. At the end of the day, every company is going to tell them how reliable they are, but the company that actually walks the walk, that can prove up front that they've got the ability to walk the walk, that they've got the reputation and the history to have been reliable, those are the ones that's a criteria for reliability that people look for. There's rule policies. So they might have safety policies, or that they have rules about billing and days of payment. These are all things that, as a seller, your company needs to have these differentiators so that you can meet their criteria to move forward. Of course, price, savings, and efficiency doesn't necessarily have to be price. It could be process, how long it takes you to fill a job, how you invoice, when you invoice, how many days of payables. These are all how many steps in the process there are for them to follow, how much paperwork they have to do. These are all parts of savings and efficiency. Can they upload their job orders to you, for example? And of course, timing and availability are important. When a company is in the right place at the right time and they're available to provide services to you, they often are a differentiator because they sometimes can't even get a hold of one of their customers. In one of my businesses, I took a call at 9 o'clock the night before last, and we did a $115,000 deal on Tuesday night at 9 o'clock on Tuesday night, because we answer the phone 24 hours a day in our company. We've got a call group that answers the phone for us, and if it's important, it gets escalated, and it got escalated. And by 11 o'clock at night, we had a deal signed, and we had people going to work the next day. And so that's the nature. I own a health care business, and so that's a little bit different from your typical staffing business. But the example of being available is the example I gave you from just this week. Now, from the person, from you, they're looking, I got to admit to you, sometimes it's just timing. Sometimes, are you there at the right time? Are you convenient? Can they find you? Do they still have your phone number? Do they have your email address? Do they trust you? When you talk to them and you tell them something, do they believe you? That comes from a relationship. It comes from the effort that you've made to be believable, to be trusted, to be convenient, to be there at the right time. So they look at you as a person. You might have the greatest company in the world, but if you've got a person who's not making the effort to be those things, then they're just going to look at the entire deal and say no. So they look at it, knowledge and experience. Are you the kind of person who, even though your company might be a global organization with the most knowledgeable people in the world, at the end of the day, they have to deal with you. Are you knowledgeable? Are you experienced? Can you help from day in and day out? So why are these customers buying? And this is part of the process of a salesperson in asking questions of their customers. It's also part of a process of deciding who they're going to call. How are we going to spend our time efficiently? So we look for, on the temporary side, we look for people with short-term requirements and transition replacement people. Someone's going out the door. It's going to take a couple months to bring a new person in. People in the temporary world and contract world tend to look at non-core roles. Yeah, there's interim CEOs, but that's one job. There might be 400 jobs in the interim non-core roles. The uncertainty of the duration of the work. So can you find customers? Can you define a business or a customer, their business process, their product, or their service by them having uncertainty? When they are uncertain, you've got a business opportunity. They look for people to fill quickly with response times and fill times. And very often when we do proposals, they ask us to quote those numbers and tell us our metrics. So telling a customer that you can fill that job now, or proving to a customer that it can start tomorrow, often is a very important criteria when you're selling temp. Companies want to protect themselves against terminating employees. So when you know and ask and have conversations about that companies have issues because they had to fire somebody and it was so painful and it took so long, and the issues surrounding it and the lawyers and the money, but they know that if they've got temporary help and they say, hey, we need this for 4 months or for 3 weeks, that they can mitigate all of those other issues. Lots of companies, to their own detriment, have got all kinds of hiring rules and hiring restrictions, but they still have needs. They still have peaks and valleys. They still have growth. And so when we look for customers with hiring restrictions, so when we're in an interview talking to a candidate and they tell us about the hiring restrictions at their last company, we know that that's likely to be a warmer prospect than a colder prospect. Shortage of supply. I mean, this is where we all focus. Maybe we overly focus because we tend to be looking for customers that are having a really hard time filling their jobs, but it's probably hard for you to fill their jobs too. So, we can become so specialized that we're just better at recruiting that kind of skill than the customer is or our competitor is. But we also might spend all of our time looking for people who've got a supply shortage only to get 100 orders and fill two. And so we have to be concerned about the supply side. Customers who've got a supply requirement or prospects often will give you orders. Ask yourself how reasonable those orders are. When you can find a balance between your skill and ability to recruit those specialty people, they become a great prospect. And then, of course, they look for direct and indirect savings. When I say direct savings, sometimes they have to pay their own workers this much, but their billing is this much, or by the time they pay their person this much, then they burden it with unemployment insurance, Canada Pension Plan, workers' compensation, employers' health tax, training taxes, termination pay, vacation pay, public holiday pay, all of those things. All of a sudden, we've added 20 to 30% to the base salary of that. And the question is, on a dollar for dollar basis with all of the other benefits, can we provide them with direct or indirect savings? And of course, for those people on the line who participate in search, and I know that some of you do, very often the demand comes from supply availability. They just cannot find the person that they need. But sometimes it's not about that. It's about confidentiality. It's about because this executive or management role is going to be new, or we're going to terminate someone, or something going on in the organization. They want to go outside the organization to get the vast majority of the work done, to keep confidentiality inside, so that the people inside can be focused on their business and not all the drama that you might see in a TV show or a movie where people are competing for the job and wondering why they didn't get it, where's the company going, and what's this all about. So confidentiality is often a driver for recruitment or executive search. Of course, time savings when you have difficult people and you've got one executive trying to recruit for a colleague executive. This executive doesn't have necessarily the time to do it themselves. And so they save time by outsourcing the work to someone else. Of course, there's indirect cost savings because if you hired someone to do this internally, you could create a department, buy the software, do all the advertising, take your time. So there are definitely indirect savings. Whereas in the temporary side, we tend to see the vast majority of the business done in the non-core roles. On the search, and particularly the higher the search level, these become more core roles that work with our search consultants. So it's not likely that you're going to get gas station attendants in a search and the customer paying fees. They're more likely to do temporary help. And if you're looking for CEOs and CFOs and CTOs and so on, you're more likely to see those and managers and office managers and branch managers and accountants. You're likely to see those more on the search side. So is there some specialization? Is there a professional process this has to be followed? A medium-sized company, even with 200, 300, 400 employees, may not have a defined and rigorous, super professional HR process. Maybe that's just not needed in their company. But when you are going to try to attract these core role people and you want to present your company in the most professional way, sometimes it's best to outsource that. Of course, the talent pool with executive search and management search and placement companies is often bigger than companies who only do it once in a while, and they look for guarantees. So why do these customers who already do business with somebody change to a new supplier? Well, they might be selecting supplier because they have no internal resources. They no longer have or haven't had for a long time a supplier. But it could be that they're dissatisfied with the performance of their supplier. This is highlighted because this is the most common reason. Customers change their supplier because they are indifferent They're not particular about who solves their problem. They're only particular about the problem being solved. And so if you're trustworthy and you're reputable and your price is normal, then very often the most common reason why customers have multiple suppliers or change suppliers is because it doesn't matter. You get to fill this job, they'll fill that job. You fill it for 6 months, you fill the next 6 months. So long as the process meets their requirements, then they move forward. And this is the most painful thing for us as salespeople to understand, that we sometimes earn customers because we were there at the right time, the right place, and we were convenient, and we met the criteria, not because we were super better. And we sometimes lose customers because we weren't necessarily at the right time in the right place and super convenient and filling the jobs as quickly as we'd like. And somebody else came along at the right time and they weren't particular about changing. So sometimes we can overstate our importance in sales and not recognize the fact that we need to do more in order to create a barrier to exit to keep that customer. And sometimes we don't take advantage of the fact that we just need to be in the right place at the right time. Very often there are processes like tenders or bids and qualification processes that we have to write out and submit. They make decisions on prices and rates. Research tends to show that if you're within usually about 10%, prices are usually within about 10% of each other, they're not a significant decision criteria for customers. So you can't think that, oh, I charge $36 an hour and they charge $39 an hour, that the customer is going to not select you because you're $3 more or because the other supplier is $3 less. There's likely to be other more important decision-making criteria than the price. Once it goes beyond 10%, 20%, then customers really start to question, do I need to pay this much? But again, it's because they're somewhat indifferent. So once there is a difference in price, then it overwhelms the indifference. So if I don't care who my supplier is, but I do care what the price is, and it's 20% higher, then it makes it easier for them to leave you and change or leave someone else and come to you. Of course, there's responses to offers and like, how would you like to meet my candidate? And you open up a door because you present something immediately to them that they need. And there's lots of companies out there that really have made their mark in innovation through features and benefits, such as their applicant tracking tools and their profile tools and their interview methods and their technology and their integration of their master vendor programs to the customer's procurement tools and so on. So technology and process can often be a differentiator for decision making. So we've got price shoppers out there, though. I talked about price shoppers, about a 10% difference. When a customer seems overly focused on price, we need to then try to reframe the conversation, because we know in our hearts that if it's around a 10% difference, it's probably not the real reason why they're looking somewhere else. So, but there might be an issue with value. They might be not so happy with the time it takes for the other supplier to fill the jobs, or the quality of talent that they're supplying, or the process that they're following, and it's so inefficient, and they have to make so many phone calls and emails and going over their tracks and mistakes on invoices. Of course, these savings are not only in that rate that they were focused on, but the savings can be throughout the entire process. And of course, reliability matters. We talked about it all the time. So for you sellers out there who are finding that your customer is overly focused on price, then take a moment and a step back to take a look at what the real decision criteria are probably about, because it's not likely to be that 10% differential. Salespeople should be involved in territory planning. So part of the territorial planning is defining what you sell. Can't sell everything. Some people try to sell everything to everybody. They try to be everything, every kind, contract, temp, perm, executive search, management search, payroll services, light industrial management. Some people try to be everything to everybody in every discipline, in every industry. That might work, but probably not in a repetitive, predictable way. So we got to define what we sell, what we're good at delivering. And then once we defined what we sell, we need to define who buys that. If this is what I sell, if I sell men's athletic shoes, then I got to assume that it's men's and mothers buying and wives buying for men or my personas. So we need to know what we sell and then who buys that. And then we have to define which and why those customers buy. So now that we've defined an industry and a type of business that buys that, we say which ones are inclined to buy and why is that company more inclined to buy than others. So a territory plan is used to target the right prospects and customers for implementing our activities and our activity goals so that our salespeople can, just like we talked about warm versus cold leads, so our salespeople can be proactively spending their time and pursuing potential buyers, not spending all their time trying to learn whether or not they're potential buyers or trying to get us to change what we sell to match potential buyers. So territory planning isn't just geography. It isn't just postal codes. It's the definitions of what we sell, matching up with what customers buy and who those potential buyers are, and knowing that they've got a reason to buy it. So define what you sell with a sales statement. Everybody should do it in your own company. You should sit down twice a year and say, hey, let's read our sales statement. Let's look at our sales statement. Does it still reflect exactly what we do and what we sell and to who? So our sale, and I don't mean our sales statement, people have to memorize it and you make a sales call and you say that elevator pitch exactly the way that you've written it down. But this is a mental and emotional part of the process where salespeople can continually remind themselves to have a territory plan with defined customers, with defined buyers who buy exactly what we sell. And so we need to say things like, we provide, if you're a light industrial company, we provide light industrial temporary staffing services to large or big, medium or large businesses with warehouses and logistics operations to help them respond quickly, here's the need, and cost effectively to unpredictable change. What is it about them? To unpredictable changes in both their supply and their demand process. So there's an example. And so we say, well, why are you selling to that little company that's got 5 employees? Why are you selling to this company that doesn't have a warehouse or logistics, but they do landscaping? Maybe you don't have any landscapers. Define what you do and who you sell. And I know that with a proper territory plan, with a definition and people sticking to their definition, that they're going to have more results. So what are some other examples? I know probably nobody online is in light industrial. We provide confidential specialty recruitment services, executive search services, to assist companies in finding and hiring highly specialized and difficult to discover accounting and finance staff. So there's an example. Another one might be we understand and expertly source and match highly specialized contract IT professionals to our customers' projects, not their full-time permanent jobs. If we're in the contract IT business, they got to have projects. Something's got to be happening. Something's got to be changing to effectively help them get to their projects completed with the right skills, on time and on budget. These are the kinds of statements that our salespeople need to be reaffirmed with affirmation statements at least once a year, probably twice a year, because sometimes too, your business changes a little bit, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally. The question is everybody in the business, especially salespeople, but also all those other people like recruiters, customer service representatives, managers, who've got parts of the sales process in their role, need to have these consistent affirmations. So our territory plan is not only geographical, but it's a target market, it's an industry, a process, what technology they use, the size of the company they are. the volume of business that they require. And then we take a look at what I call a vertical, which is whether or not it's temporary help or contract help or IT professionals or contingent staffing, or whether it's search or retained search or PEO or payroll. We define what we sell, and we define who buys it, and we define it through our vertical. And then, of course, there's always the definition of the disciplines. What kinds of jobs do we, and again, what we typically do a lot, what a lot of companies do is they hire a salesperson and they say, this is your territory. Or how come you didn't identify that those people were potential buyers? Well, if we go through this process with every one of our salespeople or with ourselves, we're likely to be more defined and have far more success with the amount of effort that's required to go into it. So I've got some things on my screen here that I want to move around. Okay, so a selling and service strategy. So we often have to understand that there is no silver bullet. There's no one thing that we can do. We can take a look at what our business model is. Do we get one order at a time? Do we make a call, get an order, make a call, get an order, make a call, get an order? That's what some businesses are designed to do and do well. So they've got this new business development strategy. Other organizations are the repeat bulk orders. They don't make a ton of sales calls, but they've got a focused, very small number of prospects, and they want to go in there and get 300 or 50 or 25 orders at a time or in a short period of time, and they repeat these bulk orders. Some of our customers, if you're doing business in the National Capital Region and you do business with the federal government, the vast majority of your customers came from the federal government through RFPs and proposals. And so knowing when the proposals come up, what the criteria are going to be, how you qualified to win those proposals, doing your access to information, this is all part of your process. And sometimes you might be in that office, say, for example, in Ottawa, that's got 50% of their business in private sector on repeat bulk orders and 50% on proposals. Know your business, know that it only doesn't come from one silver bullet or place. Sometimes you can be a vendor of record and you're a global organization who goes out to global customers, and you become the global supplier with a master vendor on-site services office, and then you hire sub-vendors to help you to fill all of their jobs. That could be your role. That could be your thing. But I'll be honest with you, there's not too many companies in the staffing industry that, even though that might represent 60% of their revenue, it represents 60% of their revenue. It's not the only silver bullet that helps them to move forward. Always be a sub vendor. You can say, hey, I go one order. I like repeat bulk orders, and I don't mind being the sub vendor to the global master vendor because I'm getting multiple orders from the same source. So is that your model? Are you a global, national, regional corporate participant, which means does head office go out and make these sales, and you run a branch office and you have to fulfill the business in the branch office? So now your role in sales is upselling, cross-selling, and keeping the customer so you get the highest percentage of the business that's available, not necessarily creating the new customers because they came from head office who signed these national and global contracts. Are you a VMS supplier, VMS adopter? Are you an inbound lead company that takes calls? Again, I mentioned my healthcare company. I mean, 90% of the business we get is from inbound calls. We generate leads through Google advertising, online advertising, marketing programs, and we get inbound lead generation. We don't make outbound calls. We don't make calls and say, hey, are you sick? Do you know a sick person? Can I help you? We don't do that. So you really got to know what your business model is. There's usually only one, two, or three approaches. But it's never one. It's never the silver bullet. And let's change screen, Steve. There we go. So qualified buyers. I always like to say to people, sell to people who buy. There's this story about the shoe salesman who went over to Australia and went over to the Outback and then sent a message, got into the telephone booth and called back to Canada and said, send me a container load of shoes. I just went into the Outback. There's a million people out there. None of them have shoes. Send me every kind of shoe you possibly have. I'll sell it for you. And then 6 months later, his replacement person was there, and she phoned back to Canada and said, send me empty containers. I have to return all these shoes back to you in Canada. Nobody here wears shoes. Nobody buys shoes. So, the moral of that story is that while the salesperson thought there might be a need, they were not buyers. They were not going to become buyers. And so always sell to buyers. If you spend all of your time trying to convince people that they need your service and they don't use that service already somehow, some way, you're taking a bit of a risk. I mean, if we go back all the way to the beginning of cell phones and mobile telephones, and we think about how many companies in Canada started and got sold or failed before we ended up with the two that we have in all of their little subdivisions. I mean, there was probably dozens that spent the first 5 years of mobile phone technology trying to convince people to buy a phone. And when all of your efforts put into trying to convince people to buy instead of finding buyers, then you're utilizing a whole bunch of resources in a risky way. When you're talking to customers and we want to qualify a buyer, we say, okay, now that I know you buy something, but do you buy what I sell? And if we have to change our entire business model, boy, it better be enough business to change our entire business model. Otherwise, probably not the best match. You have to ask the question, are you, Mr. Buyer, authorized to decide? Can you do this on your own? Are you able to make this decision, or do you have other stakeholders or other people with authority? Because we want to be selling to the decision makers. And if we can't get directly to the final decision makers, which sometimes is the case, hopefully not, but sometimes it's the case, then we have to be presenting our information to our contact person, our influencer, with the decision maker's perspective in mind, not just the influencer's perspective in mind. So does this person have the ability to make the decisions, or are they are they an important influencer? Are there other stakeholders and influencers in a decision? Does it matter that the owner has got an opinion but doesn't participate in this, or that some other important employee's got a brother or sister in the industry who might throw a wrench into the deal, or that there's a board of directors or some process of authority for signatures that it has to go through? Who are the other stakeholders and what are their roles and their interests that we need to address? Are there vendor criteria that you can meet? Did they say you have to have $10 million worth of this particular type of insurance, and do you have it? Are you willing to go and get it beforehand? Is it a promise you're going to make if you get the business? If it's a promise you're going to make, you're going to get the business, it's a pretty good chance you don't have other customers just like them. So we take a look at, we meet the vendor's criteria? Is the prospect financially capable? We don't spend enough time in this industry trying to understand whether or not they can afford to pay their bills. And are a lot of the decision criteria that they have based upon trying to save money because they can't afford to pay the bill. And so they start doing some crazy, silly things in the way that they do business with you and the way they reject orders or don't accept candidates or give you objections that are really fake objections when the objection was, I don't have any money, might be. So are they financially capable of doing business with you at the level and the amount and the frequency and the cost and the price that you do business at? Is there already a supplier that the buyer is committed to and they're just playing with you, talking to you, learning from you so they can go back and be a better negotiator with their current supplier? So flirting with other people at the party sometimes is a waste of time for the other people at the party. So, we've talked a little bit about that. Let's talk about some terms. So we talk about customer profile. So that is what industry, what location, how many employees, how much money can they pay? Do they have a contract? All of that is all in the customer profile. We talk about our target market. So when we made our sales statement and we did our territory plan, who is our target market? When we talk about market share, we talk in terms of percentages. So if they're us, my company, your company, three of us all selling the same thing to the same group of prospects and customers, what percentage of that is mine? What percentage is yours? We try to increase our market or control or protect our market share. When we talk about market growth, very often we'll take a look at things like, is this a growing market? Is this something that is being sold to seniors or something being sold because of the global warming? And is this just something to be alternative energy? Does the market grow? So when we're selling staffing to companies, we got to ask ourselves, are these companies in an industry that will grow? And is this company in this industry likely to increase the amount of staffing services that they use in order to determine if there's market growth? So we have to look at the whole vertical slide, their industry, their position in the industry, products and services they deliver, their business model, their financial capability. Now we know, based upon all of that, is this leading us to believe that they are going to be a growing customer and part of our market growth. Customer penetration is the process of talking to a customer and cross-selling so that you sell other services to that customer or selling to other divisions, departments, and buyers. So customer penetration. You'll hear the term barriers to entry. This is when you have to have a lot of stuff. Let's just say, for example, a VMS tool that can handle thousands of job orders that you can implement on site at the customer's office. And the only 3 companies in the country can qualify to meet that. So that need is a barrier to entry. So whenever there are more hurdles to get over to become a potential supplier, you have barriers to entry. But on the other side, once you become a supplier and that customer becomes dependent on you, what services, products, features, methodologies can you put in place so it becomes a barrier to exit? In one particular company that we had hundreds or thousands of contractors in the technical world working for a customer, and the contract came to an end. But the way that the original contract was written was that if they wanted to, even though the contract came to an end, if they wanted to hire those people or transfer those people, they had to pay a big fee. And so instead of paying a big fee and selecting another supplier at maybe a lower hourly rate or some other feature or benefit, we created a barrier to exit because of this big fee at the end. So it was better for them to re-sign another long-term contract and avoid having to pay that fee and avoid the barrier to exit. So the barrier to exit stopped them from ending the contract was one criteria. It stopped them from ending and moving forward. So barriers to entry stop us from getting in. Barriers to exit stop our customers from getting out. Of course, we talk about competitive advantages, and very often that has to do with volume of business, specialization, location. It can be anything. Lead management tools. Every sales representative needs to be fully integrated in understanding their company's lead management tools. Do they use the CRM? Do they help to manage the lists? Do they help to make decisions with the lists as to what is going to be sent out to what lists, whose lists, and when? Do we participate in social media engagement and email marketing, in developing those templates and collateral as salespeople in that sales and marketing? Are we continuing to participate in the marketing side to make our sales process easier? So let's talk about cold calling and success of cold calling for a sec. We've got 15 more minutes before we take a 10-minute break and give my voice a break. So cold calling success. So cold calling prospects is about this process of conversion rates. So we want to be able to say, okay, I phoned 100 people and I converted 12, or I converted 33. And so we really focus on conversion rates as a result of achieving our goal, whatever that goal might be, as a percentage of the calls that we make of these outreach attempts. Statistically, the magic number of touch points for a sales representative in the staffing industry is 8 touch points before they make a sale. Of course, you talk to people, and if they're a really warm lead, super qualified, everything's great. First call, order, done, closed, sale. But on average, the number is 8 touch points. That means 8 calls, or 5 calls and 3 emails, or 8 points of contact before that customer, there's the hurdles have been overcome. There's a relationship, there's a rapport, there's convenience, there's ease of business, overcome objections, all of the things that happen in the sales process. The number is 8. Now, keep in mind, every industry and every buyer and every persona is different. 8 touches might work for some companies and might find success with fewer touch points than others. Again, I like to use my healthcare companies as an example, as a contrast. The number of touch points in the healthcare business is 2. They have a need, fulfill it. They don't call you because they might have a road or something. They have an urgent need. You can fulfill it. Deal done. So warm prospecting, albeit not cold call prospecting, has half, somewhere between 1 and 4 contact points before we move forward. So now again, the focus on, are these leads qualified? Are these leads warm? Did these leads come from some knowledge that they were an active buyer in the process? Because the amount of work that goes into it is cut in half, from 1 to 4, whereas in the cold calling, it's 4 to 8. So we use, in order to make these touch points, we use what I call the toolkit. And so let's give an example of what might exist in this toolkit. We document the prospect with our CRM. We've called out to them. We put them in the database. We then make an introductory call, and we try to develop some interest and get some excitement and develop some rapport. And once that call is done and we've learned some information, we follow up with an email. And then we've sent that email and we've confirmed all the things that happened in the call. And then we add them to our marketing campaign so that now they start to get the trickle emails. So we know that even if I don't remember to send them an email about something specific, they're going to get something of value, of information anyways. During this process of these conversations, telephones, calls, and these emails, we make a promise to do something. So now we're converting this into an action, and we fulfill the promise. The promise can be simply that I will get you that information before you arrive at the office at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I will find out who that person was, and I'll call you back within 2 hours, and I'll let you know who that person was. I'll send you a text message with my personal email and cell phone number so you can call me any time of day or night, and you send them a text message. Make a promise, fulfill the promise. Then connect with them on LinkedIn or some other social media, on Twitter or on Facebook, someplace, so that they now start to see you more often and feel like they know you on a different level. Send them collateral. Send them the brochure. Even though you had a great conversation with them and everything was great, send them the brochure anyways. They might show it to their mom. They might take it to their coworker. They might leave it on their desk for other important decision makers and influencers to see. Send them your collateral. Better yet, tell them you'll send them the collateral and then send it. So now you've been a promise maker and a promise keeper. Schedule a visit to see them, because listen, I've done business with people, and I've been around this business for 41 years. And I've done lots of business with lots of people that I've never met in person before. It's the nature of the business. It can happen. But I don't remember a customer who I've met in person many times who stopped doing business with me. I have lots of customers who started doing business with me without meeting me in person, but I don't remember any specific examples of someone who stopped doing business with me after I met with them, and especially after I met with them several times. Schedule a visit or invite them to your office. Begin the process of creating this professional rapport to a personal rapport so that people feel a connection. So that when you say things, you are more credible, you are believable, you are predictable. Even though you might be in the age of social media, email, text messaging, and application software that does the communication on your behalf through AI, make a visit. Follow-up calls and regularly scheduled interviews. Even though you don't have a purpose for a follow-up call, put something in your calendar and schedule a follow-up call. Because if you don't do it, it won't happen. And remember that I said earlier that customers change suppliers because they're indifferent. And one of the things that on that list was convenience. I know this hurts, but after we've made calls, there's still a really, really good chance that your customer or prospect, your prospect, does not remember your name. They can't remember the name of your company, or they get your name confused with another company, or another company confused with your name. Because they're indifferent. And no matter what they tell you, no matter how you feel, they are indifferent. So put your name on everything, on every communication, on every email, make sure that on every device, on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, on your desktop computer, in your application that sends out auto messages when you complete something, make sure that every single time, whether it's initiating a new message or responding, we set our emails up, people set their emails up so that when they reply to an email, it doesn't put their signature at the bottom. People have cell phones that they use and they never set up the email signature in their cell phone. All it says is, this was sent from an iPhone 14. Make sure that everything has got an email signature with a phone number, an email contact, an office number, a company name, a URL for your website. The more times you put your information in front of them, the more likely it is they'll remember. But even more importantly is that when they don't remember, which they won't, they can conveniently find you. They can look at the coffee mug. They can look at the pen. They can see the Post-it note. They'll look at the brochure on their desk. They'll find the business card in their contact. They'll go into their email and find it in their email. Use hyperlinks, logos, slogans, your name. Do it frequently. Do it everywhere. Make every time a person wants to contact you easy. Hopefully, they're the kind of person that puts I put everybody into my contacts, except for I can't remember sometimes who they are, and so I don't go looking for them. So I know that somebody applied for a job with me. They phoned me. They didn't go through the process. And I went, oh, geez, here's the process. Go through the process. And I put them in my contacts anyways. But 3 weeks later, I don't know, can't remember that person's name. So when I go to look for them, I got to make sure they went through the process so I can search for them, find them, because they haven't sent me an email after email and connected to me on Facebook, and so that I can easily retrieve that person. You are that person. Put your email signature on everything. If you have email apps and devices, get it configured so that it works and puts your connection information everywhere. Talk about barriers and roadblocks. I got 4 more minutes before we take a break. Barriers and roadblocks. This is the most common complaint from new sellers. It's their difficulty in making live contact with people. They've got gatekeepers who are trained or told or just believe because nobody told them that their job is to make sure that they don't get to talk to anybody. So your job is to answer the phone on behalf of the company, but just make sure nobody gets through. It's kind of like what they think and what they believe. And so we end up trying to find out information that people are in. We end up sent to voicemail. We send emails to emails, and they've got spam blockers because of the way we sent our thing or because of their system. We need to get to the top of their inbox. We need to get them to answer the phone. There's all kinds of methods and techniques that you can use in order to try to get past the gatekeepers. Try using direct dial extensions. Figure out what their direct dial extension is. Go on their website, look up the contacts, figure out who the poor people are. When you go to talk to somebody and you get their email, you can and you get a receptionist, you can say, what's their extension? Do you have their direct number so I can, when I phone back, I can leave an email? They'll give you that information. Say, when they go, hey, I'll transfer your call. Oh, excuse me, before you transfer my call, in case I have to call back, what's the extension number? So that you can get it into your database and next time go right there and try to avoid the gatekeeper. Plan your time for the best chance of an answer. You know, I don't know if you're selling light industrial is the best chance to somebody get a hold of you at 6:45 in the morning. If you're trying to deal with an owner of a small business, is the best chance at 6:45 in the evening. If you're always calling at lunchtime and they're never there, do you think you should always call at lunch again? Try and think about what's the best time. Try a different time of day. When you go to get through to someone and you get their voicemail and you think, okay, I've already left one voicemail, then called me back, hit 0. Or listen to the extension number saying, if I'm not able to take you, or you can hit 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and talk to my assistant. So hit 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, talk to assistant. Ask them, when's Steve going to be in? What's the best time for me to call back? Do you think you could take a Post-it note and stick it on his chair? Because I really need to talk to him today. Try different things. Try an assistant. Try a coworker. Always leave a message. I don't mean always leave a message all the time, but never not leave a message because you haven't left a message before and you think messages are bad. So you don't get through the first time. Okay. If you're going to call back 3 minutes later, call back 3 minutes later, you don't get a hold of them, leave a message. If you call back 3 minutes later and you get the voicemail again, maybe don't leave a message. But if you call back that afternoon, leave another message. Hey, Steve, called you this morning. I know you're really busy. I left a message. So this one's really brief. My phone number is bop, 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 bop. Give me a call back when you get a chance. I'll be in the office till 6. Make it personal. Leave a message, leave a message, leave a message. Send an email to them saying, hey, we had some difficulty getting a hold of each other today. I think you might have been in court all day long. I understand totally. Maybe it's best we schedule a time. I'm available on these dates and at these times. Do any of these work for you? Don't send I don't think you should send an email saying, what's a good time? It's too open-ended. They don't have to make a choice. They may not even respond. Give them some choices. Take a look at that. Here's 2 morning choices. Here's 2 afternoon choices. Here's 1 evening choice. Give them some choices. Once you got it, send a meeting invitation. Use your Outlook, use your Teams, use something to send a meeting invitation so that they can pop it in their calendar and to have that meeting with you. When we're making, this is the last slide before we take a break, and then we're going to take a break. When we're leaving those messages, we need to create a compelling and interesting message. You only have 1 opportunity to create that first impression. You know that. You get 1 chance to make a first impression. So think about this too. I don't know how old you guys are, everybody is, but if you're old like me, I certainly remember the day when telephone answering machines were available at the office and at home. And they had 2 cassette tapes. 1 cassette tape had the recorded message. Hi, you've called the Jones residence. Leave a message. And the other one recorded the message. So this one played, it automatically rewound. The next person phoned, it played again, automatically rewound. And this one over here recorded the messages, and you listen to the messages, and then you fast forward to the next one, and you listen to it, and you listen to it. I remember there might have been wine involved, but I remember that first machine, so excited. And my wife and I sat and we Who's going to leave the message? Should we do it together? Should it be, we're newlyweds and we want to leave a joint message. And we giggled and we were stupid and we couldn't. Hello, this is Steve. And I should say you're okay. Hi, this is Lou. No, that didn't work. And then you listen to it. Oh, we shouldn't have. You can hear the dog barking in the background. In the early days of telephoning, having a script and leaving. Nowadays, it's, hi, this is Steve Jones. Unfortunately, I'm unable to take your call right now. If you leave a message after the tone, I'll get back to you at my earliest opportunity. Please leave your phone number and I'll call you back. Have a great day. Bye. So I don't need to have a script anymore. I've done this 50,000 times. I know what it's supposed to say. Maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe not exactly the same every time. Maybe a little more emphasis one way or the other. But if you're going to start leaving messages for customers at their office to get them to call you back, use a script. Develop something. Play with words. Change a word. Introduce a pause. Use different intonation. Over time, you will get better and better and better at it, and you won't need a script. And even if you do need a script, you'll only glance at it and you'll leave them a message that will be compelling and clear and professional and will increase your chances of getting a call back. If you're leaving a different message for people every different call, and you haven't been scripting and practicing leaving that message, and you're not getting callbacks, that's why. Use your research so that where you have the point in your script, insert the important thing here, that's where you say the important thing to get their interest. Be respectful of their time. When you are calling people, and particularly when you're leaving a message, make sure that whatever tool you're using, whatever heads you have on, what Bluetooth, whatever, that it is good quality. When I buy a microphone and a headset, or when we buy equipment for our employees to use as headsets, we don't care so much how it sounds to us. Everybody in the business sells clarity of sound. Oh, the Sony, this, the Bose, that sounds like real life, multiple layers. It isn't what it sounds like to you that matters. It's what you sound like to them. Make sure that the microphone is super awesome quality and that the quality of the connection is super clear. And if you hear a buzz on the line on your cell phone or a crackly connection, and you're going to leave a message on somebody's voicemail, hang up and start again. Don't leave a message that sounds like you're in a cave or calling from a subway station. Ask permission to call them back. Ask for permission to have a conversation. Be polite and respectful. Try to schedule the callback time and be clear and absolute about what your purpose is. People don't mind you saying, hi, I'm calling you because I have a candidate that it's really super on paper, looks like probably perfect for your account manager job in your steel division. And I want to talk to you about this candidate and possibly set him up for an interview or a meeting with you. Can you call me back, please? Be clear of your purpose in your call. Vague stuff does not work. So here's some tips. Use the prospect's name when you talk to them. When you talk to them or leave a message, use their name. Use your name and say it clearly and slowly. Just because it's familiar to you, if I say Steve Jones too quickly, I end up people calling me Dave. Don't know why. So I want to say, this is Steve Jones calling from Business Leadership Corp. My phone number is 416-565-9638. That's Steve Jones, 416-565-9638. Give me a call back this afternoon if you get a chance. I appreciate it. Goodbye. So being super clear with your name, your purpose, your phone number, asking for permission is really important. Stay positive. Show it in your voice. Imply that there's a benefit, then ask a question. When you're having a conversation with somebody, you might want to say, I really want to save you the money on this. Do you mind if I ask you a question about that? Imply a benefit, ask an open-ended question. Avoid your jargon, avoid anything that other people outside of your office don't know exactly what it means. Sometimes it doesn't mean exactly the same thing. Avoid your jargon and avoid asking dumb questions. So if you're if you don't know anything about something, don't talk about it. Don't bring it up. Do some research, ask the right questions. Okay, we're going to take a break right now. It's 2:37. We're going to come back at 2:47. We're going to try to be done by 4 o'clock on the nose today. Please keep your microphones on mute. Your cameras are off. I'm going to put mine on mute and freeze my camera. Come on back when you've finished checking your messages and filling your coffee mug. I'll see you back here, and we start at 2:47 on the nose. Talk to you real soon. For you to, if you wish to unmute your mics, if you have a question. I know that there was one question in the chat that I responded to on our break, but if anyone has any questions or comments up till this point in time, I know we're rolling quickly. And if you don't unmute your mic, I guess that means I've either put you to sleep or we're ready to keep on rolling. Okay, so these steps and these phone calls that we're making, first, we've built a script to make our introduction. We're pretty good at it. We've practiced it. And we've got some little variables in there where we're going to drop a name or say the purpose of our call or do something that's going to help us to develop rapport and get their interest. So often telling people that you do business with other companies in that industry, or you know so and so, or you used to talk to their predecessor, or you were in the process of doing something and then the pandemic hit, whatever, and you'd like to kind of, revisit that topic again, getting their interest, developing rapport, showing that there's some connection there is going to make that telephone call in the first 30 seconds or 1 minute go much better. And then asking for permission. Is this a good time? Do you have enough? Do we have 5 minutes that we can spend to have a short chat? Is there a better time for me to call you back? And getting that person to say yes. And then clearly, if this is a kind of a cold call and we need to be qualifying people, then quickly getting to the process where we start to qualify, whether they're the right person, whether they have needs, whether they have buyers, whether they've got issues. Obviously, the warmer the call is, the more we can lead into that in order to discover, uncover, and get them to start talking about their wants, needs, fears, guilt, holes, desires, problems, so that we can now start to use our creativity to overcome some of those through the service that we offer. I think it's important that we establish before we make a call, what are we going to ask for? And very often people set out saying they want to ask for an order, when really what you might want to ask for is for another call with more time. You might want to ask for a Teams or a Zoom call. You might want to ask for a meeting. You might want to ask for the opportunity to send something. Know what you're asking for and make sure that you ask for it. And then when people give you an objection, we have to become better managed at managing those objections. And so there are certain phrases and things that you can develop that will help you work through your objections. And so there's some things like, for example, the phrase, I call it a bridge phrase, obviously you. Obviously, you've given some thought to this and you've got a good reason for saying that. Do you mind if you spend a minute and explain it to me so that I can understand it better? So giving the person credit for their opinion or their decision or their objection, you're probably the most experienced person in the business, and you've been doing this for a long time. There's some good reasons for that. What are some of the things that you're going to look for that would be different, that would make your answer different? There's different ways to ask questions, but they usually managing objections come from giving the person credit and complimenting them for their objection. And then clearly at the end of the call, you've made the ask. There's always a promise that something's going to happen, or an ask for something. It's called a call to action or a CTA. We'll set up an appointment for tomorrow at 4:00. We'll come see you tomorrow at your office at 2. I'll send out the invitations for the Teams meeting so that we can have this group call and you can invite your colleagues to the call. Whatever that call to action is. But if there's no action that comes out of the ask, comes out of the ask, then overcoming the objection, resulting in a CTA, then the call was just a touch point. It was just one of the 8 that's necessary to move forward until eventually you can go to the ask, the objections, and the call to actions. So let's freeze, moving forward. So one of the ways to deal with this, and this is probably the most boring and most effective advice that I ever can give anyone with respect to sales. I've got a customer in Calgary that I've been working with for the last 3 months, and their company has said that this particular thing, of all the things that we've talked about, this particular thing is the thing that has made the most difference in their productivity. Their sales numbers have increased tremendously at a rate of new business development that they have not seen in years, coming from a proactive outbound sales program, included with all kinds of other marketing, and it's time blocking. Every person has a calendar. They're using Outlook. In their case, they use Outlook. And in every person's calendar, every minute of every day has got a block for an activity. Now, it can be an interview. 2 p.m. Thursday afternoon, interview with so-and-so, 2 to 2:30, 2 to 3 o'clock, whatever it might be. We do that. We do that all the time. But what if you need to be making outbound sales calls on Monday morning, and you need to do that between 8:30 and 11 a.m.? You create a block in your calendar where you make an appointment with yourself from 8:30 to 11 a.m. to make outbound calls. You put notes in the notes portion of it as to who you're going to call, how many calls you're going to make, where you're going to be getting those leads from, who you're going to be calling back, why you're going to be calling them, and you block the time. If you're going to spend time to go for lunch, block the time for lunch. If you're going to spend time to look at resumes, block the time to look at resumes. Never overlook, delete, or bypass a block. At worst, you drag and drop that block someplace else in your Outlook or in your calendar. Moving it to a new place and continuing to do it is a compromise. But if you just say, I didn't have time to do that, it's because you weren't working in your blocks. Blocking time allows you so that every hour of every day of every week is blocked out. What activities? Attend the meeting here, talk to staff here, review resumes here, call customers here, fill job, call candidates here, do this here, send out emails, respond to emails, prepare presentation every hour of every day. It helps you achieve your goals. Time blocking helps you break down larger, bigger goals into smaller, more manageable tasks. So instead of, oh, I got to write that proposal, you block time to say, I'm going to write sections 1 and 2 of that proposal in this block. Allocating time consistently to these tasks gives you steady progress towards your goals and objectives. And it makes sense that every week tends to have a pretty similar set of time blocking. So you always, for example, on Monday morning are making service calls to people about new starts. And you've got that time block. It shows up in your calendar every week. And you've got a team meeting every Monday morning at 11 a.m. And that's in every Monday. So you can have these recurring things in your schedule to help you to stay focused and to help you achieve your goals. Remaining focused on these activities through your work allows to turn off these distractions and to stay in the flow of your work. These are tasks, things that you do, activities are put into blocks. It'll allow you to stay focused and concentrated and productive. It gives a to-do list is like this list of things that you need to accomplish with it's not broken down into tasks. You've got, I got to finish the proposal. I have to close that deal. I have to, find a candidate. These are to-do lists. They're too vague. They don't have times. They don't have tasks. They're not blocked in your schedule, and they're not broken down into small pieces. So it gives you, while to-do lists tell you what needs to be accomplished, they don't specify when you'll work on these items. Time blocking bridges the gap between to-do lists and actual productivity by dedicating these chunks of time in your calendar for specific tasks. This sounds boring, but everybody's calendar should literally look like a puzzle, like a mosaic. Use color codes for different kinds of activities. It is the most important thing because you know what? It doesn't matter if you know what to do. It doesn't matter if you know how to make a better sales call. It doesn't matter if your communication is clearer, if you're smarter, if you've got more features and benefits. If you don't block the time to actually perform the activity, to use those skills and differentiators and features and benefits, nothing happens. Awareness of your time will make you more focused on how to be productive. Reducing what we call context switching, which is the multitasking, by having clear blocks of time for specific tasks, helps you minimize this jumping from one activity to the other. Answer the email, take the phone call the person, work on the resume, read the thing, have a coffee, meet with the person. So context switching, and although we're super impatient people and we want it to go, 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 we need to understand that there are certain activities that generate results. And in the absence of blocking that time out to perform those activities, we're not likely to get the results. So I sometimes say to people, create something like this. Define what the most important 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8 activities are. Take a sample schedule, put it in there and say, okay, this is what every week looks like. Every week in this time block, this activity happens. Every week in this time block, this activity happens. Every week in this activity happens. So that your schedule now starts to look like a mosaic of blocks, and leave yourself some time for some flexibility for new appointments and for new interviews, or at least block out in advance. Wednesday afternoons from 1 to 4, I do interviews, and I'm going to do 4 interviews in that time period. Block it out. So then 2 weeks from now, you know that you're doing interviews Wednesday afternoon from 1 to 4. Block that time. Otherwise, you're just randomly moving from one thing to another. Now we're going to make these sales calls. We want to make it a warm call. So we're going to research our prospect and our company. We're going to get as much information as we can so that we can drop names. We want to know your contact names in advance. That whole thing about, can you please tell me the name of the person responsible for, is a killer. It's a killer. If you can avoid calling a company and asking who the person is, if you already know who the person is, you've got the opportunity for rapport building. If you have a rapport builder, which means a name drop of a person who used to work there, who does work there, a person you talked to, a person that referred you to them, a information you have about the industry, the fact that you know that their son scored 3 goals on Saturday afternoon at the local hockey game, if there's something you can do, make sure that you know what that rapport builder is before you pick up the phone. Have facts and examples. I love this phrase, more like this. When you've got a customer who's been successful, you've provided some type of service to them, temp, perm, contract, payroll, something. You solved a problem. You find a company in the same industry with similar needs and goals and objectives and issues, and you can say to them, I worked with Xerox on something exactly like this. They're using the same software that you're using. We were able to integrate our applicant tracking system and the presentation of our candidates through that software so that you can get those right on your desk. Is that something that would be of interest to you? Have facts and examples, and particularly examples that sound like more like this. I want to do more like this example with you. Establish your call objectives before the call. Know what you're going to ask for. If you know that you're going to have a scheduled call, confirm it in advance. And if you're going to have a scheduled call, whether it's in person or on the phone or on a Zoom or on a Teams or a telephone call, be on time. And if it's a video call, be early. And if it's a meeting, be early. And if it's a phone call, be on the second when it's supposed to happen. When you have these meetings in person, you want to make your introductions to people, use that opportunity to develop rapport, get to know people's names, repeat people's names, show that you remember their names, define and confirm the objective of the meeting. Today, we're going to talk about what we're going to try to do before the end of the meeting is this. From my perspective, I like to see it like this. From your perspective, I think we'd like to see it like that. So what we're trying to do is this business needs identifying contributing factors, saying, and that's because this happened because apparently you guys have a little bit of turnover in your call center. I understand that your accounting rep manager has quit, and we need to get on this pretty quickly. And then once we've had that discussion, you want to start to present your solutions. Our solution, I think, would be for us to get this agreement signed and then for us to start presenting candidates to you by Monday. So who would be the people who are doing the interviews? Presenting solutions, just asking, will you let me do that? Can I be of service? Usually doesn't take people forward. But if you say to people, would you like me to do this exact thing? They might say yes, or they might say no, but you can do this exact thing. But in the absence of the possibility of specific solutions, you don't reach consensus, so you want to get agreement about whether there's a fit or a no fit in terms of how you're going to move forward. Usually this is done in trying to, at the end of the process, it's done about how you're going to get the information about the job orders and how you're going to present the candidates to the process that you're going to follow. There's everybody's from different companies on here, so I'm never going to tell you what to say. Yeah, Steve, yeah, but what should I say? I'm not going to do that here. I can do that with you some other time so that we're not disclosing your confidential personal company information. And some people here are in search and some are in temp and some are in contract and so on. So we're talking principles. But remember, while you're having this call and you're in person or on the phone, know the difference between open-ended questions and closed-ended questions, and think hard before you ask a question so that you almost always in the beginning ask open-ended questions. And open-ended questions are questions that can't be answered with one word or a number or a yes or no. So they are phrased with things like, can you explain to me how? Obviously, there's a reason why this is happening. So tell me what's going on. Something changed over there. Can you explain to me what you think changed that caused this? There's some things that you want to achieve in this. Tell me about the top or most important things that you want to achieve through this change. So open-ended questions allow the customer to talk freely, to start to tell you about the things that probably concern them the most. Whereas a closed-ended question, if you're not asking the dead-on right questions, they might say yes or no and it's done. It's just done. And so, and transitioning from closed-ended questions, particularly after a no, can sometimes, for some people, feel quite uncomfortable. It can feel like you're challenging their no and you're disagreeing with their no. So learning how to pose your questions in an open-ended way, particularly in the early parts of a sales call and a sales process, are better because you need to be an active listener, a guerrilla listener. And as we move closer to the end, the very end, we can have yes or no questions. If I can have a candidate here for you Monday morning, 9 o'clock to start that shift, would that make you happy? Yes, it sure would. Well, then we should go ahead and do it, don't you think? Yes. So getting yeses at the end are the confirmation of the closure, but at the beginning, and I got to tell you, it is hard. Sometimes you think you're having a conversation, but you phrase a question in such a way that feels conversational, but it's closed. It's a closed-ended question. So don't be surprised when you get a rotten answer, when you don't learn too much, or when you feel like they're putting up barriers because of the way we ask the question. And there's this concept that I refer to, I made up the term many years ago, but other sales professionals and people have different names for it. I call it positive response conditioning. As you start to move towards the end of the site, the object of the call, in person or on the phone, and if we're going to start to ask closed-ended questions, let's ask rhetorical close-ended questions that are more likely to be yes. So we might ask the question, like after the person's had an opportunity to tell you a whole bunch of stuff and explain things to it, you might come back and say, okay, so if I understand it correctly, the biggest issue is the fact that you've got pretty high turnover in that clerical accounting role in the accounting department. Is that correct? Yes, it is. So getting people to say yes to little things along the way makes them more inclined to say yes when we get to the closing questions. So we start with open-ended questions, allowing people to talk, disclose, be conversational, tell us what the real concerns are. As we move closer to understanding it, and in this conversation, we start to ask some positive response questions where they're likely to say, yeah, that's right. That's okay. Yeah, yes, I get that. So they've said yes. And then we can do a pre-closing question, which is just suppose. So we haven't said, will you marry me? We say, just suppose we're still together in a year from now. Do you think it's possible that we might ever get married? Well, that's a possibility, but we'd have to see how it goes. This is what we call a pre-closing question, where you set up the possibility of things that could happen. And when they say, I don't know, then we use, well, just suppose that we were together. So the just suppose is when they give you an objection and it sounds pretty good. Like they say, I don't know, it sounds pretty expensive. We're paying $35 an hour now, and you're talking about 37. Okay, so just suppose, so this is where we start to overcome the objection, the conditional question. Just suppose we're able to come up with either a rate of 35 or some other cost savings to make it 35 or better. Just suppose we were able to make this financially. Does everything else sound good to you? And the just suppose question, which temporarily and theoretically, conditionally takes away the objection, allows them to say, yeah, but I don't know. There's still the issue of, which is what we call attempting to overcome the objection to get full disclosure of the real objection. So the just suppose can maybe take the objection away. Oh, that $2 an hour was a bit of an issue. We just supposed it out of the way. And now they say, yeah, but there's still the issue of, I need to get approval from. I'm not the decision maker on this. We have to go to the more senior person. Now we've got the objection. Now we know we're not dealing with the decision maker. So who knows what's going to come out of it on the conditional question, but we do the pre-closing question, which is, do you think that we might be able to go forward with this? We do the just suppose question to help, once they've given us an objection, to move the objection out of the way so that we can disclose any real objections or other objections. And then we handle those creatively and address them until we can now move forward and say, okay, do you think we can get going on Monday? Can we get this deal signed and move forward? Can I send you a candidate? So discovering the real objections are all about whether you're hearing it. Are they giving it to you in these open-ended questions? And when you're doing your just suppose responses to them, are you hearing it? Is it coming out? Is it an authority issue like the example I gave you? Are there other stakeholders involved who need to participate in it so the person doesn't feel comfortable and confident and they might have the authority, but they don't want to make the decision on your own? Hey, listen, I've been a CEO. I've had lots of employees. There's certain things that even though I had all the authority in the world to make, I'm married. There's certain decisions I would never make, even though I could. Sometimes you have to consider the fact that their buyer is going to consider the opinions and the input of other stakeholders. You got to figure out whether or not they truly understand the offering. I mean, it was really interesting one time when I was on a sales call where the customer made an objection. We overcame the objection, pretty complicated solution. came up with it. They agreed, found out that they needed to take it to this committee, went with them to the committee and listened to this guy present the problem and the solution to the committee, and it wasn't anything like the solution that we offered. As a matter of fact, what he described was terrible. And we had to then present it all over again to the committee. And thankfully, we had the opportunity to do that and we closed the deal. But did that person really truly understand the solution? And the answer was no, in the example I just give you. So this hypothetically removing it, just suppose, is a really great way to go about it. And have you tried adjusting to a minor commitment? So sometimes when the person says no and they give you objections, then you say, okay, let's try this on a smaller scale. Let's do this. Let's do a trial offer. Let's make a minor commitment. Let's get something. Let's see how it goes tomorrow. Let's do this little bit of a thing so you can step into things, because sometimes people don't feel super confident in the decisions that you're making. As we move towards closure, we got to understand that there are multiple points of closure. There are agreements. You can sign here. There's a point of closure. Talking to a customer and they go, okay, you start asking for the information about the order and they start telling you the job description and the hours and who they report to. That's a closure. That's getting an order. Qualifying the order when the order sounds really silly and almost ridiculous and unfillable, getting them to modify their criteria to be more realistic. That's a closure. That's overcoming an objection and getting them to agree to something. When you present it, you might have orders, but you don't feel like the customer's closed. They don't feel committed. But when you start presenting candidates to them or asking attempts to start on assignment and they say yes, that's a closure. So when you're working on a search, on a permanent placement, or an executive search, on a management search job, and they've given you a job or you're working on contingency, is there really when they gave you the order and they're on contingency and they're working with multiple sources, they're running their own ads, they're taking their internal referrals, they're dealing with another agency, did you really close that customer? Or have you just been moving towards the opportunity for closure? And so getting a candidate in front of them and getting them to make an offer to that candidate, an offer of employment for a candidate, that's a closure. So understanding and defining the closure is important. And it's important to know that if you're a sales manager and you've got salespeople and they lead you to believe they've got closure on a customer, you being the manager might want to ask, how do we know this is closed? Will they accept our candidates? Are they going to do interviews? Have you scheduled times? Have they signed the agreement? Have they agreed to the price? Do they know what our guarantee is? Are they going to be around next week? So in the different factions of our industry, closure means something different. I have got, in the past, have signed master vendor of record agreements. We've gone to proposal, we submitted the RFPs, we've gone on presentations, we've signed the contract, and never got an order. 2 or 3 years go by and get 0 orders because they signed with 3 suppliers, and the one supplier who signed was the supplier who did 99% of the business in the last contract term, and the individual buyers who've got the authority to call up against them, the vendor of record list, never will entertain calling anybody else. So is it a closure? And the answer in that case of the vendor of record with no orders, not a closure. Not a closure until you've really, quite frankly, have got an invoice that can go out the door. So post-call follow-up, we've done this phone call, we've got the order, we've got the signed agreement, we're moving forward. It's common for meeting participants to come away with varying degrees of understanding. I think I gave you an example already today. So we send an email afterwards, recapping everything that we talked about and the things that we agreed upon, or you do it in a letter, or you do it in a contract. We follow up with a phone call because When we think that we had a good rapport, following up with a phone call to reassure people of something, to just check on something, to make sure that they got something is really important, because sometimes meetings happen and that's out of the way, check. And you got to think about the customer's perspective. They're busy and they've got their priorities, and that's out of the way, check. They don't think about it again. I can't tell you about the agreements that me as a buyer have signed with various vendors for them to provide me with the service. I said, yeah, I really want that service. And I signed a contract, but for 3 months, I put them off until they can start doing whatever it is that they're doing. Because until they, but only them phoning me saying, yeah, hey, when are we going to get started? How do we get going? I get the thing, I did the stuff, and them moving it forward will actually turn the closure into closure. So we follow up with a phone call. We remember the term, if you don't know it, it's called buyer's remorse. Very often, everybody buys something, they agree to do something, and then they wonder, did I research it enough? Did I know enough? Did I really need that? Was there another solution? How's so-and-so going to feel? How much work do I have to do to make this decision work properly? So we want to thank the prospect for the meeting, thank the prospect for the decisions they've made, make them feel good and comfortable, and try to remove any issues about buyer's remorse or meeting remorse, and make them feel as though the rapport that we built is ongoing. We want to agree upon our next steps. What do we do next? This call to action. Nothing happens until there's an activity. The call to action was the purpose of the call in the first place. We set out to meet it. We got an agreement to do it. Now we have to do it. We do this by fulfilling our minor promises. We've made minor promises. We fulfill them. We need to go back to the office or get off the phone and walk down the hall, and we need to notify our team of internal resources, the account manager, the internal recruiter, the customer service person, the pool of recruiters who deals with all the light industrial jobs for this call center or for this distribution center. Let them know what's coming down the pipeline and how they can start to be prepared, so that all of our internal resources are in sync with the promises made and the calls to action made with the customer. It's not uncommon for salespeople to make a sales call, and then a month later, the boss saying, they said what? They promised what? I didn't know that. I'm really sorry. We didn't do that. We could have done that had we known. So make sure that everybody on your team knows. Update your account files, your CRM, your pipeline system, your calendars, to make sure that the callbacks, the next step in the pipeline, next step in your CRM, all of those things fall into place. Keep your promises in motion. The more activities that take place, remember, sales is activities. Keep the activities in motion. So what do we measure? How do we know we're doing a good job? Well, you hear the term key performance metrics. And so key performance metrics, or KPIs, these are the activities, not the goals, not the objectives, not the amount of sales, not the gross profit, not the percentage. These are the activities, these performance activities, the key performance indicators that are intended to influence the outcome, the results. So the activities can be sales calls, they could be telephone connects, they could be send outs, they could be the number of quotes that you submitted, prices you gave, visits you went on, interviews you performed. Measure activities. I've said this before. I think that if you measure more than 5 activities, you're measuring too many. Once you start to measure 10 activities, you've diluted the most important 5 to make it feel like the 10th one is the most important than the first one. So measure about 4 or 5. Really important. That's why they're called key performance indicators. The performance indicates activities. And then we've got another report that is our performance outcomes. These are the results. This is what happens after the fact. And so this is about sales and about new orders received and about how many people started last week and what our gross profit was. And so there should be a relationship that exists from the KPIs yesterday and last week and last month that are resulting in the outcomes of tomorrow, next week, and next month. And there should be some relationship. And if we look back in time to the KPIs that occurred a month ago, we should have some good indicator next week and next month what's going to happen as a result of those activities. And I can only say this, that if we're measuring the right things, the right activities, if we're measuring them accurately, if we're doing them and performing them, and they're related to the outcomes, then if we don't get the outcomes, then there's something else going on. The economy is going to the pits. Your person is doing it in a really terrible way or a really great way, and they're getting better outcomes. So, but we can never judge outcomes without judging activities, because outcomes can come from luck. Outcomes can come from the change in the economy. Outcomes can come from a tornado or a hurricane or a pandemic. Outcomes can come from a change in the economy. Outcomes can come from anything at all. We need to draw a connection between activities and outcomes, and we should see them go like this. So these key performance indicators, the KPIs, they need to be specific. Very, in the game of golf, they talk about par. There's the par 4, which means 2 shots to get on the green, 2 putts to get in the hole, 4 shots. The green is very defined. Very defined. It's a very specific edge on it. When the ball is on the green, it's on in regulation. When the ball is off the green after your second shot by this much, it's off in regulation. We're very specific about what we're measuring. Just because you used your putter from 20 feet off the green doesn't make it a putt. We're very specific about what we measure. If we're not really specific, then our salespeople don't trust the KPIs. Our team doesn't use the KPIs as a motivator to go forward. Everybody's got an excuse because there's some reason. We need to be extremely specific so that it is so specific that it is very measurable, that we can count it. We can count the number of people that were talked to on the phone. We can count the number of minutes on the phone. We can count the number of appointments we went on. We can count the number of resumes that we send out for a job order. They have to be very specific and very measurable. And when we set out our goals for these key performance indicators, they need to be realistic. They need to be attainable. There's no point in setting a goal for something that people aren't going to achieve. If you set a goal that's a stretch goal that's not likely to be achieved, then after a short period of time, people just become depressed and they actually stop trying, because it's easier emotionally to say, well, I didn't try very hard. I mean, yeah, I didn't hit the number, but I was out that afternoon and my kids, and then there was that meeting. But when goals are attainable, and we know that if we spend 4 hours in order to get through to 10 people, that if the number's 10 and we can get through to 10 and we can count 10 and very specific, they answered the phone, we had a conversation, 10, then we can do it. If the number's 35 and every day we fail, we just stop trying. So they need to be attainable. And we also need to know that when we've got these 2 reports, this outcome report and this activity report of these KPIs, that the activity needs to have some direct bearing on the outcome. So if the activity is hours spent in the birthday party planning committee, well, that might be justifying how you spent your time, but that's not related to outcomes. It's not related to outcomes. So if you're a salesperson and you want to have an activity that's related to outcome, it's got to be one of those 5 key performance activities. If it's not related to the outcome, don't measure it, because you're going to hear me say this again. What you measure is what you get. If you tell people you're measuring this activity, those are the things they're going to do. Even if they're dumb activities, if you tell them and they're not related to the outcomes, and you tell them that's what you're being scored and measured on, those are the activities that they'll perform. What you measure is what you get. You tell people I'm counting this, then they do that. And if the activity is related to the outcome, then they're doing the right activities and they're affecting the outcomes down the road tomorrow, next week, and next month. And also remember too, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to measure activities unless you do it in a time frame. If it's in a defined short time frame, this is how many we make in a day, this is how many we make in an hour, this is how many we make in a week, and maybe at the absolute most, how many activities in a month. I think a month is too long. Then it means something. But if we just say, hey, I need more, that's not very specific. And if you say, okay, I need 10, but 10 are done by the end of the year, not 10 done by the end of the day, that's not very time relevant. So these specific, measurable, attainable, related activities need to be expressed in the form of a time. And tie this back to a couple slides back to blocking. Remember your time blocking. So we put these activities in each block of time with the numbers that we need to perform and what activities we need to perform in each blocks. Way early in the presentation today, we talked about documentation. We talked about detail orientation in the personality traits of highly successful people. We said, don't be too freakishly detailed, but then don't be too messy also. There's this expression, the dullest pencil is better than the sharpest memory. Find the right balance of complete documentation to promote your efficiency and to promote your service quality without creating unnecessary opportunities for procrastination, and avoid make work projects. You know, I've got one manager, super smart, super awesome, works in our business. If I left it up to her all the time, she would rewrite every policy better and better and better all the time. And I'm not sure whether or not we actually need to rewrite the policy. It's good enough. It works. Never had a problem. Somebody asked a question. She thought, geez, I thought the policy was clear enough. I'm going to spend the whole afternoon rewriting that policy so next time nobody will ask a question. When really I wanted her to be making 10 sales calls, talking to 10 customers, presenting 10 candidates. So we want to make sure that we are detailed enough that we are working on, that we can access information, recall information, get accurate information so that we can do an activity in an efficient way. And we want to avoid making work and doing detail and documenting things that don't change the outcomes. It's like job order details, start times, finish times, guarantees, who got sent to what customer when in the calendar, so we can do reminders. Hey, just reminding you, you've got that interview tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. How are you going to get there? Do you need a ride? Can I get you an Uber? You know, whatever it is that you need to do, make sure that you're detailed enough that you perform the activities that you need to perform when you need to perform them. In order, think about the importance of term sheets, written agreements. Written agreements are a term sheet. We call it a term sheet more often in a permanent placement business, a written agreement or a service agreement, more in the temporary help business. Doesn't matter. It's a written document that the customer signs and has that says who's going to do what for how much and what some of the implications, ramifications, and so are of our decisions. And that piece of paper helps the person to close the deal. So many chicken salespeople without the assertiveness and the confidence to ask, will you sign here, please? Never get their pen out because they think, my goodness, this is a tough closing question. It's a closed-ended question with a yes or a no. This is the moment of truth when they sign that agreement. And so just softly move forward, start presenting candidates, getting some job orders, doing some things. And you know what? Those deals sometimes start, they sometimes don't, they get delayed. There's issues later on about payments and rates and process and all of that kind of stuff. This pen and that written agreement are a salesperson's best friend. And when we are comfortable in saying, okay, let me write that up, we'll fill in this, we'll do that. We've got this guarantee here, 6 months, we've got that rate. Oh yeah, that one is $33 an hour, blah, blah. That one is $65 an hour. Here we go. Does that look right to you? Okay, if you sign that, let's go take a photocopy, or get 2 copies and I'll take one, you take one. The signed agreement is an affirmation of the closing. It details the negotiables that we talked about as we moved along so that these agreements and understandings of what we did are now put in writing. We know that we've got a question of whether do you have the authorization to buy a written agreement. It's highly unlikely the person without the authorization to make a decision will sign that agreement. So we are affirming and confirming again that the person we're talking to is the authority. It allows customers to define their expectations and their deliverables so that they feel in control and they feel comfortable in saying yes. It allows us to set out our payments amounts and our formulas and how things are calculated so that down the road, some more junior person who wasn't involved in the decision-making process has to try to interpret tomorrow why the customer is so unhappy about the number on the invoice. It creates barriers to exit because you have a written agreement. And earlier on, we talked about creating barriers to exit. Signing an agreement that says to a customer, this is a 3-year deal with an option to renew for 1, creates a barrier because they say, I'm not going to leave. I've got a contract and I can't sign with you because I've got a contract. Creating barriers to exit are done expertly with written agreements and term sheets. Barriers to multiple competition. These companies that will give out multiple orders to multiple companies, and then you phone and say, okay, I've got 4 people starting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. They're going to report to, whoa, wait a minute. I gave you that 2 hours ago. It's already filled by your competition. What? I just had 6 people working for 2 hours to fill that order to start tomorrow morning, and you gave it to somebody else and didn't tell me? And furthermore, you didn't tell me that it was filled by the competition an hour and a half ago? I've just wasted all those resources. Having a written agreement often clarifies whether there'll be multiple competitors involved, and it also emotionally sets the customer up to think, I can't have multiple people involved. I got a contract with these people to provide the service. It validates the buyer's commitment to you, and it mitigates or reduces the likelihood of disagreements and problems in the future. So problems are mitigated. I'd like to say that written agreements are a seller's best friend. So now we got to ask the question whether or not in your organization, the motivators are aligned effectively. Do the rewards and comp plans and commission, do they incentivize the salespeople and the recruiters who are involved in the sales process to do and perform the activities that you want them to perform? So is it a salary job, 99% salary, and your whole objective is to make people feel comfortable and confident and show up for work and be of service to you? Or is it a commission job, eat what you kill, encourage people that, they better get something done today or they're not going to get paid. And if they want to make a lot of money to buy a bigger house, then they need to work harder? Is it some balance of my commitment to you, salary, with your opportunity to make big bucks through commission? The comp plan needs to be specifically aligned to try to encourage the activities and the behaviors that we want to get the results that we want. And if you're a salesperson and you think that it's not aligned, you should have a conversation with your manager and your supervisor about how that comp plan, it's just math. You get it up front, there's risks. You get it down back, there's no risks, but higher rewards. It's math. It's risk, reward, and math. What do you want to achieve? So if you're a manager or an owner and you're producing comp plans, does it help do what? Are you just trying to think, is that fair? Does it pay them what I can afford? Or does it actually incentivize, create incentives and motives for a person to behave in the way that you want them to behave? We look at some of these organizations, I had one office that was almost entirely light industrial. And the nature of the business was such that they wanted a team of 6 service coordinators and recruiters to work in a pool, and that the orders would come into the pool and they would all work together. And it didn't matter whose candidate it was or who made the phone call or who did the thing, because there was always 50 jobs on the board. So that particular group had a team compensation plan. And of course, when somebody didn't carry their weight in the team for a period of time, the team spoke up. So that plan was designed specifically for them. But if you're an executive search and management consulting job where you rely upon an executive search person to get an order, fill an order, and they work almost entirely alone or maybe do a split, then your compensation with plan for them is going to be entirely different than the compensation plan that existed in that pool of recruiters for the light industrial team. We also want to take a look at our comp plans and ask ourselves, does this give us incentive to generate new business or to maintain the business we have? Does it give them incentive to generate new business or to penetrate the business further by getting into new departments and cross-selling, which is part of maintenance and new business combined? So some organizations say, hey, at the beginning of the year, we're going to allocate you $1 million worth of sales from the customers generated last year. So here's a book worth $1 million. They bought $1 million from us last year. It's your job to take it to $1.2 million. If you get that group of customers to $1.2 million, then you were the balance of new and maintenance person exactly that we wanted. If it went down, you failed at maintenance. If it goes up, you succeeded at new. If it stayed even, you met your minimum requirement of keeping it even. So comp plans need to be aligned to your objectives. A lot of our comp plans are based upon sales volume, when in fact, particularly in the contract and temporary help world, we need to be focused on gross profit. Of course, in the permanent search business, almost entirely the whole invoice is gross profit. But imagine we were doing a split. So literally 50% of the gross profit is going to that recruiter and 50% is going to that recruiter. So we think in terms of gross profit, but we're splitting the invoice amount 2 different ways, but 100% of it is gross profit. But in the temp business, we've got payroll cost. And in the contract business, we've got the cost of contractors. And so we need to take into consideration not only what our sales number is, but more importantly, what's our gross profit? Did we increase our volume by giving up margin, lower prices, higher wages? Or so a lot of organizations are focused on sales. We really want to encourage people to think a lot about gross profit so that the motivators are aligned with your objectives. And of course, we've got all kinds of issues in different businesses about whether people work as individuals or whether they split. Do they split sales? Do they split gross profits? Do they split it between 2 companies, let alone between 2 people or 2 teams or 2 departments or 2 branches? And we also have got different comp models, some comp models that are based upon activities, and some comp models that are based upon results, and some comp models that are based upon both. If you follow the KPI rules of key performance indicators, we probably want to have some level of our comp to be addressed towards activities. Because remember, what you measure is what you get. If you're measuring activities, you get activities. If we comp people on their activities to some degree, then we're really putting a lot of focus on activities. So what you measure is what you get. Let's talk a little bit about pricing, margins, and negotiations. So the volume of business and repeat orders is important. Is this a customer that gives you $1 million worth or 5 million or $5,000 worth of business? And do they give you one order or do they give you multiple orders? And are those multiple orders the same or similar so that you can develop a model to recruit and fill? So if you're doing call center jobs with a credit card company and they need 300 people at a time, you can develop a process to keep those 300 seats filled on an ongoing basis. But if you get an executive search for a controller job that is filled once every 10 years, then we got to talk about volume and margins and how we negotiate that contract. In the temp and contract world, very often we're focused on what that percentage markup is or what our contract is, but keep in mind that the length of the contract is important. So if we are filling a job to work as a bank teller for one day on the Friday before a long weekend, and we pay the person $30 an hour and we bill it $50 an hour, we've got a more than 50% markup, which is fine, which is good, which is nice in terms of temporary help. But if I placed a person into a job that's an administrative job that lasts for a year and I had a 45% markup, we've got 250 days of revenue. The person went to work every day for a year. We got a $9, $10 an hour gross margin on 250 days of the year times whatever number. We made $25,000 on placing that person for 1 year. We might have done just as much work in terms of taking the order, phoning candidates, and filling the order to put the person into the 60% markup job that lasted for 1 day, and we made $18. So length of contracts and customers with a profile with long 3 month, 6 month, 1 year, 2 year contracts and assignments are more valuable than customers with multiple short assignments. Of course, some people, like, for example, in the medical industry, some hospitals order 1 day at a time because of their unions. Their unions wouldn't allow them to fill a job more than 1 day at a time. And so the jobs need to be priced appropriately. So length matters. Difficulty of the search matters. The candidate supply matters. The notice that you get and the fill time for a permanent job, this has to be filled by next Monday or by next month or in 3 months from now. The person is retiring and needs to be filled by June. These things all matter. The amount of notice and fill time, whether it's temporary help fill time like now, permanent placement, the amount of time it takes to fill that job, the mandatory and value-added requirements. So it has to happen this way. They have to have this thing. Your company has to have that thing. Whatever those mandatory and value-added requirements can add to the difficulty of you filling the job and the costs associated with doing business with that customer. Of course, your guarantee matters. So if you've got a guarantee that says, I'll send you a temporary worker, and if they fail to perform to your satisfaction within the first week, we will not charge you, that could cost you 40 hours worth of revenue. If you fill a permanent job and you say, I'll give you a 3-month guarantee, and the person quits at 6, you maybe get to keep all of your money. If you give them a 6-month guarantee and they quit at 5.5, you get to keep none of your money. Do you build these things in to your pricing and to your service model? So, and do you as a seller have the authority to negotiate those things? Does your company decide for you the parameters of the things that you're allowed to negotiate and the other things you're allowed to talk about, but you got to bring back for approval, and the things that you're not even allowed to talk about, non-negotiable? Every employer profile and the customer's conditions. So is this far away? Is it a dirty place? Do they work at night? Is it beautiful? Do they have a wonderful benefits package? Do they treat people fantastic? Do they have a subsidized cafeteria? What is the profile of the customer? What are the conditions of the job? What is it like there? Can also determine what your price is. Think about this. This is an anomaly, and I know, but you've got 2 jobs exactly the same. One pays $80,000, one pays $90,000. For some reason, the industry thinks that we should maybe charge 30% of a more senior job. The 90,000 job is more senior, but we only charge 20% of more junior jobs, and the $80,000 or $70,000 job is more junior job. So we're going to charge a smaller amount of money for a job that's more difficult to fill. It's more difficult to fill because it's exactly the same as the $90,000 job, but we're only paying a salary of 70. I can't find a candidate for that. I'm going to have to go find 400 candidates, find one who will take that terrible wage. And over here, where they're overpaying, I can find any candidate that's qualified and they'll jump at it because it's a raise for them and they love to go there and be overpaid. So, but as an industry, we charge more money for the $90,000 job than we do for the $70,000 job. It doesn't always make sense. Think about the employer profile and the conditions of employment, which include the salary, and ask yourself, what should I be charging for this? And I think that when you think about it that way, and you have conversations with your customers that way, you'll have a much better chance of negotiating deals with customers to take them to closure and making sales than if you sometimes stick to these hard, fast rules that sometimes don't make sense. Customers want to talk about payment terms. They want to talk about risk. They want to talk about how long it will pay them, if their guarantee is still valid, if they don't make the payment. We want to talk about competition. How many companies have they given this order to? How many are they going to give it to? What are the terms with the competition? So we want to know, is this exclusive or are there multiple suppliers? These are all things that our salespeople need to consider. Now, hey, just some quick terminology. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides, but when we talk about margin, we talk about the amount of gross profit that's in a deal. So we're going to pay the person $30 an hour. We're going to bill it at $45 an hour. There's a $15 gross profit. Margin is gross profit reflected as a percentage of sales. So it can be the margin is $15. It is reflected as a percentage of the sale. So in the example, I gave you an example on my voice that was different from on the screen. You've got a $100 sale. You've got $75 as a cost of the payroll for that sale. So we've got a $25 gross profit, $100 sale, $75 cost, $25 gross profit. The gross profit is 25%. So when we talk about our margin, we can say it's a 25% margin. Or we can say it's a $25 gross profit. Sometimes we might say it's a $25 margin. But when we're going to use words independently, we talk about margin being gross profit and it being reflected as a percentage of the sale amount, 25% of the sale. Whereas markup is a percentage of the cost. So we have a $75 cost for this sale. We marked it up $25. So we've got a $25 markup. And $25 as a percentage of 75 is 33%. So when we talk about markup, we're talking about percentage of the cost, and margin is a percentage of the sale. Be clear about this when you're talking to customers. Nothing worse than a salesperson who doesn't like math talking to a customer about margin and markup and getting their terminology incorrect. All right, so listen, we got 10 minutes to go. I just want to finish this by saying I can spend time with any company, good sales managers, good sales trainers, about what you need to say. What are the great things that we can put into our script? What are our differentiating features in our company? What are the benefits that those features derive? How do we overcome objections? What are the things about our company and about our pricing? Every company's got to look at all of these concepts and come with things on their own. But at the end of the day, we're all not so different. It is the salesperson and their positive personality and the relationship that they can make and the impressions that the salesperson makes that's likely to have the biggest impact on whether or not sales are made. Clearly, the company, it's obligatory. They're obliged to meet the criteria of the customer. If you don't sell and can't do what they buy, the most positive salesperson is dead in the water in the first place. But once your company gets you into the game because you've met the criteria, you've got the standards, the reputations, all of the things, the tools that are available, then a positive attitude from a salesperson who can influence the relationship with buyers is what makes the difference. So you're a professional. You represent your company. You represent yourself. You represent your industry. Always be positive and act professional. Your efforts contribute to the success of your customers. They contribute to the success of your candidates and your employees. You make a difference in their lives. Your efforts, without a sale, nothing happens in a staffing company. The recruiters have no need to recruit. The payroll managers and payroll clerks have no payroll to pay. The collections people have no money to collect. The sales people drive the business. When you make successful sales, you make a contribution to the livelihood of your coworkers and to your organization as a whole. Every attempt takes you one step closer to your goals and objectives, knowing, like a batter in baseball knows, that even the best batter batting at 350, where a third of the times they go to bat, they get on base, they hit the ball, and the other 2/3 of the time they strike out. They go to the bat knowing there's a 2/3 chance, likelihood, I'm going back to the bench after this call. But you can still be the best batter in the world at that percentage. You can still be in the top 2 or 5% of batters in the entire professional league if you're batting 350, failing 2/3 of the time. Every attempt that you make, there's going to be steps in the process. There's going to be failures, but every effort that you make takes you one step closer to some success somewhere. The services that we provide in our industry make a difference. We need to feel good about it. I'm not going to disparage pencils or crayons, but because crayons make kids happy and pencils help to write down things on paper. But at the end of the day, when we fill a job, we make companies more productive. We make a difference in the lives of the people that we send to work. We change the fortune of our companies and of our futures and of our families. The services that we provide when they go there and make our customers more productive and more successful means that they make a difference in the families of the people who work there too. These are not widgets. These are lives and corporations with productivity and performance issues that rely upon people, and we make a difference. Your attitude is contagious. When you're positive and you smile and your voice on the phone, people hear it. People hear your positiveness through your voice, and they see it through your actions. So here are a couple of things that I've said today. What you measure is what you get. If you don't measure your time and do it in timely, effective ways, the wasting of time will kill your deals and your opportunity. Time kills deals. Remember that if you write a script or you make a sales call and you do something in a particular way and it's not working out for you, go back and make it better. Add a comma, create a pause, change your intonation, change the time of day that you make calls to people, change who you're calling, change the pitch. If you keep on doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep on getting what you've been getting. And if you're really happy with what you've been getting, do more of it. And if you're not so happy with it, change it up. Remember that your integrity is the only thing that you control. You control you absolutely. So your honesty and the promises that you make and the promises that you keep makes you a promise maker and a promise keeper. And that is part of the minor steps of moving forward with a customer to develop a rapport for success. When it comes to differentiators, there's all kinds of things, and every company's got things that are unique about them. Their size, the country they're from, the number of offices they have, the VMS tools that they use, their applicant tracking systems. You can talk about differentiators in your company, but at the end of the day, there's going to be at least one or two other companies just like yours. We're not so different once we get into our category and into our zone, but there's no one like you. You are a differentiator. You are one of a kind. Play it up, use it, talk about it, be it. Control everything that's in your control. Don't allow people to wait for things to happen, to hope that they phone you back, to see what the decision might be. Everything that can be controlled by you must be controlled by you. Otherwise, you are relying on hope, and hope is not a strategy. Turn your goals into tasks. These are activities. Only activities create results. Measure your results once a week, once a month, once a year. Take a look at your portfolio and say, yeah, I did really well. But if you want to do really well, you have to turn your goals into task goals. My goal is to make 17 phone calls tomorrow morning in this time block. And if you fulfill your task goals, you will achieve your result goals. Do it by blocking time and scheduling time for those activities. And when you do it well. Be an expert. Learn your business. Learn about your customers. Learn the answers to the questions. Know what you need to say. Understand that when you're dealing with this company, you can learn things that will benefit how you service that company. Learn about their industry. Learn about employment standards. Learn about everything that ACSESS CPCs have to offer. Learn about your company. Learn about their company. Be an expert. Be impatient. Don't wait. Impatience is a good thing. Not the kind of impatience where you sit at the light and the light turned green and you can't even wait for the car in front of you to just start to move forward, so you honk impatiently and obnoxiously at them. I don't mean that kind. I mean the kind that is friendly and is important, and that you just can't wait to get it done. You can't, when something is sitting waiting for something, that you start something else. You overlap in multiple activities. You become a multitasker, and you know that time kills deals, so you shorten the cycles to get things done. If they think that tomorrow at noon is a good time to get it back to them, get it back to them today by 4 o'clock. Be impatient. People will respect you for your impatience and the things that you perform in that impatient time. Remember that if you don't ask your customers for something, you won't get. Ask for the order, and if they say no, ask why not. Be a promise maker and a promise keeper, because the promises you make and the promises you keep will define you as a person. Be positive, using positive response conditioning, knowing that a customer in the habit of saying yes to the little things is more inclined to say habits to the big thing. Can I buy you a coffee? Would you like to go on a date? Can I take you to the movies? Would you like to come meet my mother? And if you haven't got yes to the first 3 things, you're not likely to get yes to the last one, to the big ask. So as you go through the sales with customers, you say, can I show you this candidate? How can we work out that price? Can we do this thing? Can we talk to so-and-so? And as they say yes and yes and yes throughout the whole thing, can I start this person on Monday? The answer is more likely to be yes through positive response conditioning. Remember this, that you need to answer the phone. If you let your phone go to email or to voicemail, if you let them go and leave messages for you, you'll never know. A customer that's calling you with an order and you don't answer the phone, remember, they're indifferent. They just call your competitor. They might leave you a message, but time kills deals. Measure everything that you do. Put your contact name on everything so that you continually remind them who you are and make it convenient for them to get a hold of you. Remember this, it's always about the customer. It's never about you. If you tell them, oh, we can't do that because we this, because our company that, remember this, how does this affect the customer? It's always about them. Don't take it personally. If they say no, it's because it doesn't fit them. If they say not yet, it's because it doesn't fit them. Don't take it personally. Don't be upset. Don't become depressed and anxious and quit your job and procrastinate and have call reluctance. The decisions that customers make about their business is about them. It's not about you. You think it's about you. It upsets you when they say no. Get over it. Be positive. Know that tomorrow they could say yes. And there are 5 other customers that will say yes to you because they're saying no to somebody else. So you do that by preparing and replacing yeah, but with yeah, okay, let's do that. That sounds good. How do we do this? when a customer says, I don't think so, because you can go, okay, that sounds fair. So how do we change that? Ask questions that are open-ended. Remember that your promotional items that you put your name on, your company name on, that cup, that pen, that dipstick cleaner, they're not sales avoidance tools. They're not things that you drop off so that you don't have to talk to somebody. They're not something that you mail or send in the thing or give away in the bag so that you can avoid having to talk to someone and make a call. They're your brand builder. Once you've had the call, once you've talked to the person, once you've nurtured the relationship, you say to them, I would like you to have this. You deserve this. They're brand builders. They're not call avoidance tools. And remember too this, hope is not a strategy. If you think something's going to happen and you wait and you hope for it to happen, it's not within your control. Control everything, turn your strategy into a book of activities. And I know that as an industry sales professional, you're going to be a top performer. Okay, guys, we're 3 minutes over today. We're supposed to finish at 4 o'clock. Talked a little fast towards the end. I'm going to encourage you to demute, and ask me any questions about any part of this. I will stay on for 5 minutes or 5 hours. Doesn't matter to me. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear your comments about stupid things that I said today. So please take your camera off, de-mic, jump in there, have some courage to say something.
Hey, Steve.
Hello, Kevin.
So good. Oh, so good. Can you go into a little bit, and not too long, about some best practices for e-blasts?
Yeah.
I'm mixed on those. I know my clients are mixed on those. They kind of work, but when they don't work, I get a lot of, you're emailing someone who doesn't work here. I didn't sign up for this. I'm sending you to the spam thing. So I know there's implied consent where they sign up for our newsletter or they go to our website and click in, but there's also where if I just go do a sales call on somebody and get their business card or meet them at a trade show, there's a term for that, but I'm allowed to email them on something. It's not implied.
Okay, so
it's another term for that. So can you share best practices on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, there's two issues, right? One is the law, and the other is what's going to get you the best results. And sometimes they're not exactly the same thing. The law requires you to have some form of consent, and if they ask you to remove it, you have to remove it. And so that's why all of the Campaigner and MailChimp and all
Constant
the
contact and all those things.
constant contact, they've all got opt out, change your preferences. They've all got that. So it's important that you have that feature, but it's important that your system does a good job of recognizing that. But here's two best practices. Number one is when you're allowing a person to, three best practices. Number one is when you're allowing a person to opt out or to change their preferences, give them more choices. Allow them to say, I hire people and I like to hear things about human resources issues and general information about HR and interviewing or something. Or maybe the other choice is, I only want to know about your deals and, and sales. And the other one is, take me off your list. And the other one is, only include me on once a month. Like, have more choices, because we tend to, I know that when I look at these things, first off, I'm frustrated as heck because it doesn't even, particularly Americans, don't even give you the choice to opt out. And some of them that I think are spammy, I know that if I go to opt out, all it's doing is putting me on another freaking list that I'm going to get nailed 10 more times. So I'm afraid to opt out because I'm validating for them that I'm actually looking at the mail. So now they're going to up me 10 times on 10 different more lists. So be careful, make sure they know you're legitimate. And when you allow people to opt out, give them, if you have the technology for it, more choices. So more choices is one, but that feeds into the second best practice. The second best practice is put a lot of time into personas. So a persona is in your email or your CRM system where you define a customer to be like something. This is a candidate persona. This is an employee who's worked for us before or currently persona. This is a prospect who I've never really did a sales call to, who I met at a conference persona. This is a customer who does business with me persona. This is an employee of a customer who does business with me, but they don't order persona. The more personas you have and the more defined they are, the more better, can you say that? The more better you can define your campaigns so that people only get the stuff that matches their persona. So you can say maybe all of these things go to everybody because they match everybody's persona, but probably not. If you're giving advice on HR interviewing, behavioral-based interviewing, or a change in a law about human rights, and you're going to give that to all your customers and potential prospects, you're not going to give that to your candidates. So define your personas so that you can define the content that you send to match better to your personas. Thirdly, if you have the chance for, and this is the final one, if you have the chance for you or your recruiters or your salespeople to have administrative authority to define a persona that for a person, in other words, what kind of stuff they're going to receive, then when you get a call from Kevin, you phone me and say, Steve, I'm getting all the garbage that you're sending to your candidates. I'm not a candidate. I don't want to receive your junk. I just want to opt out, but I don't want to opt out because sometimes you do send me that once in a while beautiful thing. I said, hang on, Kev, let me go into your persona and your profile and let's define it so that we don't bug you anymore. And so having the opportunity to turn your CRM into a sales tool that allows your internal people to walk through and say, why don't we do this? Why don't we include you in that? Makes them feel like they've done the pointing and clicking. They've gone through your people have gone through the pain in the butt and provided a service to them that made them feel better and serviced better about the thing that pissed them off in the first place. So giving authority through administrative authority into your CRM to allow everybody in your company to modify a persona when they're in a conversation with a customer will enhance your sales and enhance your relationships. And I'll tell you, some of the best customers I've ever had in this world have been the ones who we did something bad or wrong or not well enough the first time, and I got involved with them. We learned how to do it better, then they became a customer for life. So give people more choices to build their own persona, give authority to your people to build personas, and define your emails so that they fit better into each persona that they receive. Best practices.
Okay, that's a lot of work and it's hard to organize all that. It sounds great when you're saying it, but in the real life, when we're just fighting every day to get stuff done, it's hard to do that. And I get it. But can you just share, say I'm just doing cold outreach?
Yeah, the good news is this. So let me just say this one thing and I want you to ask the next question. The good news is this. You don't have to do it all at once. You can build 2 personas to start off. 1 candidates, 1 prospects and customers. Then in 2 months from now, you can take your customers, buyers, not buyers. You can now split your customer persona. You don't wait till you get it perfect. Don't try to get it perfect. Don't take it to the end. I think this is like building websites. Get your darn website up and get it working. Build all the fancy features as you go, but don't get it perfect the first time. So move on.
I hear you. And last question, sorry, I don't mean to hijack this seminar here, but just to keep it really simple for us right now, say we're just dealing with client side. So candidate emails, I don't care. We'll send 1 million out to candidates. They don't mind getting them because we're trying to help them, but we're bugging clients and prospects, sort of, kind of. If we set up 2 separate ones, one to existing and past clients, we can say, hey, you've done business with us before and say something. But a cold outreach through a prospect list, or I went to a trade show and I got 300, business cards. So I put them all in. They may not even know me. Do you have an idea of what to say quickly, briefly, and the frequency of sending them out to cold prospects or slightly warm prospects? How often and what would you say in the email to get them to want to do business with you?
If it's educational and informative, if that's what you're doing. So if I were to send something out to people saying, hey guys, here's how you do profiles on people, and here's why assertive people are best leaders, and here's why listening is the best thing, and here's a Harvard Business, review report on thing, I wouldn't feel so bad about once a week. If I'm huckstering, if I'm
Yeah.
selling,
Yeah.
then you got to be careful. And so what you do is you try to blend them together. 2 or 3 informative, consultative, thought-provoking, thought leadership type of emails. 1, here's a sale, here's a sale. But if it's all thought-provocative, if it's all thought-provoking, you're not selling. If it's all selling, you're probably pissing off people. So trying to find a balance of that number. And I think that if it's leadership, educational, informative, there's no problem with once a week. If you're less, I would say the more huckstering it is, be careful. That's an opinion. If we talk to HubSpot, they would want us to do it 3 times a day. And also, by the way, differentiate between what you put on social media and what you put on email campaigns. Because you can put out something every day in social media and then pick certain things that went to social media that can also go to, so you might go once a week to the email campaign, but you might go every day to your social media account. And the people who don't want to follow you on social media won't. And their algorithms will help them to do that by itself. And their clicking and reading, not reading your stuff will affect their algorithm. So you can pound away at social media several times a day if you want. I don't know what benefit you'll get out of that, but don't be too concerned about too many social media posts unless you're only sending them to your friends, in which case they're going to say, hey, Facebook is for my friends. You keep on sending me business stuff. Stop it. But if it's corporate social media stuff, no limit. Okay, Kev, I saw your lips moving, but you're muted out, so I think that you're not asking a question. Anybody
I was
else on
just
the list?
thanking you. All good. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, no worries at all. Guys, I would love to get your feedback. You are the first group getting this. I got to tell you, there's 35 hours, 17 sales presentations that we have in our arsenal, and had to go through them and boil it down to highlights to try to get it into a 3-hour session for you guys. So knowing what you think, getting your feedback, sending a note to the office, filling out a questionnaire with your feedback is really important for us. You can take it again because you're the first group. If we offer this again, you can come again next time and sit through it one more time. No problem at all, for free. No problems with that. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to come here today. I want to congratulate you for doing your CPC, pursuing your professional designation. It's important. It's important to you. It's important to your company. It's important to our industry. Thank you very much. Wish you great sales success out there. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Steve. You have a good one.
Perfect. Thank you very much too, David. Take care.
All right.